Okay, thank you very much. It's a very important day. We have a lot of important days, but I'm thrilled to sign the Consolidated Appropriations Act to immediately reopen the federal government and fund the vast majority of operations through the rest of the fiscal year. I want to thank, and I have a list here. The list is growing all the time, and everybody wants to be a part of this. So I think I'm going to read the names. I think you deserve to have your names read. And if I don't read any, just raise your hand and let's have it. But I have to start with Speaker Mike Johnson, who's done an incredible job, done really an incredible job. And we appreciate it. Tom Cole, Ronnie Jackson, Buddy Carter, Stephanie Bice, Ken Calvert, John Carter, David Joyce, Steve Womack. And on Steve Womack, I just, where's Steve?
Right here.
Where's Steve?
Right behind you, Mr. President.
Come here, Steve. I want to just say he had that's a rough week or so, right?
Tough,
Had
Mr.
an
President.
incredible wife who passed away, but she was an incredible woman, and everybody knows it. Everybody up here, so we're with you all the way.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I'm glad you
We're
could
grateful.
be here.
Grateful. for
I understand. That's a rough deal. He went through rough. He had a good marriage. Good marriage is better than a bad marriage, but it makes it a little bit tougher when something like that happens. Robert Adderholt,
Out here.
Susan Collins. Hi, Susan. I heard you're doing good. Cindy Hyde Smith.
Right here.
Cindy, well, you always do good, Cindy.
Thank you.
Bill Haggerty. Hi, Bill. Lindsey Graham, who's way up in the polls. Lindsey, what's going on with you? You're so high. I don't
It has a
think.
lot to do with you, don't forget that.
Well, has the opponent dropped out? Has your Democrat opponent
You
dropped
come to
out?
South Carolina, they're going.
Mario Diaz-Balart.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mario. Katie Britt.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Katie. What a job you're doing.
Thank you.
John Barrasso. He knows more about healthcare than any human being on earth, I think, when I need something. John is a great person, too. Shelley Moore Capito. Thank you, Shelley,
Thank you, sir.
very much. Hal Duncan, Associate Director of the Legislative Affairs. Thank you, Hal. Great job. And Susan Ross Avison and Betsy McConnell, they were really instrumental and they really worked hard. So I want to thank you all. I don't want to, anybody I didn't mention? Oh boy, that'd be nice because it's a little embarrassing when they stick their hand up. I think to just be quiet is probably easier, but I'm glad, I'm glad we got you in because you really have worked hard. This bill is a great victory for the American people. Instead of a bloated and wasteful omnibus monstrosity full of special interest handouts, we've succeeded in passing a fiscally responsible package that actually cuts wasteful federal spending while supporting critical programs for the safety, security, and prosperity of the American people. And this group of people behind me and others, a lot of votes, they really have done a fantastic job because closing the country, we had a 5 point, it looks like 5.6, and it could have been 7. We lost a point and a half because of a 42-day shutdown. And that's the least of it. But we would have been at 7. Can you believe it? 7 GDP. Nobody ever heard of a 7 GDP. So I'm glad we got this done because this would be another point and a half or something, or maybe worse. The bill officially ends all taxpayer subsidies for radical far-left woke programming on NPR and PBS, or just a waste of money. It slashes nearly $10 billion in wasteful foreign aid spending, giving money to countries that don't need it. They have plenty of money. And we ended that. That was so important, $10 billion. Think of it. It continues the closure of USAID and creates a brand new America First Opportunity Fund for for responsibly providing foreign assistance to nations where it actually serves American interests. So we have nations that do help us and it serves our interests. So we have something to help them out with. This bill also cuts funding to abusive and weaponized IRS programs. I was a victim of that too. You probably read that. Did you read that recently, right?
Yes, sir.
I was, I guess, the ultimate victim. That were used to harass American taxpayers. It builds on the Republican rescissions package passed last summer, which saved Americans billions and billions of dollars. It fully funds our military, includes a well-deserved pay raise for all American service members, and makes historic investments in the American shipbuilding industry, which is great. We're really starting to do something incredible with shipbuilding. And I don't know if you saw that the United States of America, for the first time in over 30 years, beat Japan. We love Japan, great country, but their power in steel making, that we produce more steel this year than Japan. Think of that, more steel than Japan, and Japan is a powerhouse at that. And we were pretty much dead when it came to steel. So what do you think of that? And then, to me, when I heard that, we did more than Japan. It continues to fund deportation flights that are removing dangerous illegal aliens from our country. It continues historically successful efforts to reduce crime in our nation's capital. We have a very safe city right now. We have a city that is like a different world from what it was a year and a half ago, when you couldn't walk down a street without being hurt very badly. I want to say that in a nice way. Washington, D.C. is a safe city. Memphis, by the way, is down. Crime is down 77%.
Amen.
And in New Orleans, I don't know if you heard these numbers, but in New Orleans, we started 4 weeks ago, max. And crime is down 68%. It's going to be down to practically nothing within the next month. Pretty amazing. But it all helped cut the number of murders in D.C. by 80%. And we have numbers coming up, newer numbers. We're down 97% in murders. It's a horrible thing to even be talking about, murders in D.C. But a lot of people were being killed in Washington, D.C., if you can believe it. And now we have a very safe, I don't know if there's any such thing as crime-free, but pretty close in January compared to 12 months ago. So we have close to 95% down crime in Washington, D.C. It allows all of you people to walk to the White House instead of getting into an Uber and getting mugged even as the Uber progresses, okay? And it continues funding for the Department of Homeland Security until later in the year. And finally, I am extremely pleased to announce that this bill includes a newly designated, movie star, Melania Trump Foster Youth to Independence Initiative. So she really loves the children, and she's had a tremendous success. So it's the #1 documentary in 19 years. Can you believe this? What do I get out of it? I get nothing out of it. Now I had a top model, now I have a top movie star. But we have a great first lady. She loves children, and she had a tremendous vote on this. And I want to just say, Melania Trump Foster Youth to Independence Initiative within the Department of Housing and Urban Development, which will support America's foster youth and provide them critical resources as they age out of the foster care system. And the First Lady loves children, and she's been very much involved with children and helping them out and making them better. That's what she wants to do, wants to help them, and she wants to make them better. And she does a great job of it. She's respected, and her movie got really incredible reviews. She's done it. We're all proud of her, actually. It's amazing. Not easy to do that. Not easy to do it. So I just want to thank everybody for being here. If you would have some questions, I might just ask before you do that. These are all outstanding politicians, the top. In my opinion, the top in the whole world. But that's one of those things. I like to build it up a little bit, but they are. They're the top politicians, they're the top political minds. And if you have any statement, does anybody have a statement that you'd like to make? We'll start on the left side. Anybody? How about Mr. Speaker?
Well, this is a big thing, Mr. President. Thank you for your leadership and helping us steward this through. For a long time, we wanted to get back to regular order in the appropriations process. And you're standing up here with the best appropriators in the business and have served in many years. And we forced the muscle memory back. We're getting back to that regular order process. 12 separate appropriations bills. We've gotten them to your desk, and this is a big thing. It seems like a small thing, but it's a big thing. And we're spending less money year over year, and with all the innovations and things that you said there, this is good for the country. And America is back. The hat is appropriate. That's the right slogan.
There's a new hat. We just came out. America is back. Look, CNN's thrilled. Look at her. She's never smiles. I never see her smile. Someday I'll see her smile.
Mr. President,
Yes.
could I mention that there's significant healthcare reform in this bill,
Good.
PBM reform, something that you have been working on, and we appreciate and applaud your efforts, bringing drug prices down for citizens here in America. Not only that, but we extended telehealth, and also we are addressing maternal mortality in this bill. Rural healthcare has been a big part of your focus, and we appreciate that.
Thank you
Mr.
very
President.
much. Thank you, buddy. You know, a very big thing, I think, for all of us is most favored nations on drug pricing. So for 30 years, they've been talking about it, more than that. And it's basically we now will take prescription drugs will come down to the lowest price anywhere in the world. So if a country is selling a pill for $10 and we're selling it for $130, which is not much of an exaggeration at all, we were paying the highest drug prices anywhere in the world. Now we'll be paying tied with the lowest price. It's most favored nations. We will have the lowest price anywhere in the world. So a pill that was for $130 will be down to $20. So you can make a case that that's 800, 900%, or like the press likes to hear, it's about 80%. But we're going to get reductions like nobody's ever seen. And frankly, the Republican Party should be able to win the midterms on that alone. That's the biggest thing there is. Most favored nations, we're going to be bringing the price of drugs down. In my first term, I got it down 1/8 of 1%. And I was so proud because it's the first time in 28 years that drug prices came down. And now we're talking about bringing it down by 80, 90, 75, 68. I mean, I have numbers in the back that nobody can believe. Most favored nations. And remember, the Republicans did that. The Democrats did not do that. Republicans did it. And that's going to have a huge impact also on healthcare because medicine, I mean, it's a big chunk of healthcare. And if you're bringing thing down from $100 down to $20, $18, because we were subsidizing the entire world. And frankly, I had to get the countries to go along with it. And I had to threaten tariffs against them if they didn't approve. And the healthcare companies, who weren't easy either, but they said it doesn't matter because they'll never get the countries. Because they didn't really want to do it. And I got the countries. I got every one of them. And really, people can't even believe it. But for the people standing behind me, if you use that alone, you should win. We should win the elections coming up. Anybody else? How about on this side?
You mentioned the IRS,
Yeah, please.
Mr. President.
Go ahead.
Their behavior has been atrocious. If you think about leaking your tax returns, the tax returns of others, and never any accountability. I must have questioned Janet Yellen 4 times, 5 times under oath about this and never an answer. We stripped $10 million from the IRS in this bill that you just signed. And today I launched an investigation with my staff on all of these contractors that are associated with the ones that allowed your information to be put out. These contractors that hire activists to come in and do their work. These corporations here in America that bring activists in to do their work. That's going to come to an end.
They did leak my tax returns. It was terrible. The good news is I paid a hell of a lot of tax. I paid tens of millions of dollars. I said, where are my accountants? I want to talk to my accountant. But they did. They leaked my tax return. They didn't do it in a nice way. They tried to get something out of it. No, they're bad people.
Accountability is coming, though. You think about the phone companies that leaked our telephone records, several of us here.
Right.
Verizon leaked my telephone records. You think about what's happened across the country. This is going to come to an end.
And we should have voter ID, by the way. We should have a lot of the things that I think everybody wants to see. Who would not want voter ID? Only somebody that wants to cheat. Think of it. We don't have voter ID. and the Democrats don't want it. And the reason they don't want it because they want to cheat, because there's no reason in the world. And I love that debate, Lindsay. I love saying, well, why don't you want voter ID? And you watch them say, I don't know. I just
Make
can't.
them vote.
No, it's a terrible thing. So anyway, anybody else?
Well, Mr. President, you
Please.
said you wanted to make America safer and more prosperous,
Right.
and we have done it. More prosperity means more money in people's pockets, and they notice that every time they go to fill up with gas, and they're going to know it when they get their tax returns that this year are going to be at least $1,000, if not more, greater than it's been in the past, and that's a result of the work that you've done with this whole group. And in terms of America being safer, a number of us were at the border 2 weeks ago. The border is secure. No one is coming across, not the 10,000 we saw every day with Joe Biden. And the American people still, in overwhelming numbers, Republicans, Democrats, and independents all say illegal immigrant criminals need to be deported. And Mr. President, you're doing that.
And no tax on tips.
No tax on
Social
Social Security,
No tax on
more money
Think
in
of it.
people's pockets.
Think of it. And that was all the great big beautiful bill, as I call it, the great big beautiful bill. To me, that's what it is. And people are starting to realize it now. They're starting to see it.
They're gonna
And
see it in their
a tax deduction on if you buy a car, if it's made in America, only if it's made in America. The rest we don't care about so much. But you buy a car, you get an interest deduction. You borrow money, you get an interest tax deduction. And that is, you take interest, you deduct it against your tax. So to me, that's unbelievable for the people, unbelievable for our car companies, which is jobs. Anybody else on there?
Mr. President, the biggest part of this bill is our national security.
Right.
And thank you. The men and women who serve this country are grateful to you.
Absolutely.
We give them a pay raise. We're building more ships, as you said, planes, missiles. We need to defend this country, and you're doing a great job in leading us in the right direction.
Thank you very much. Katie, go ahead. You were going to say something.
Yeah, no, Mr. President, this is just unprecedented leadership. The fact that you got everyone to come together and actually get these bills across the finish line, you heard it from the speaker, but that hasn't happened in a long time. So 96% of the government being funded, your priorities put in place, Mr. President, so that we can make the country safer, we can make it more prosperous. And not only can we make America great again, but we can tell people now America is back.
Yeah, it's a great, we'll never forget MAGA, and we're all with MAGA, but I thought this was very appropriate, right?
Love it.
Right.
Love it. Says everything.
Cindy Hyde, come on, say something.
Well, there's a little hospital in here, a rural hospital in Meadville, Mississippi,
Right?
called Franklin County Hospital. It would have closed the end of this month without this bill. Thank you from everybody in Mississippi, especially Franklin County.
And we've covered the rural very well. Nobody ever thought it was possible because we had a lot of opposition from the Democrats, as you know, but nobody thought it was possible. That's great. How about it? Anybody back there? Tom?
Best budget for Native Americans ever, Mr. President. No,
Thank you.
appreciate that help.
So we'll sign it, then if you would have some questions of anybody up here.
Let me just piggyback. This rural America is taken care of in this bill. And I mean, as Cindy says, so thank you for all America, but especially rural America.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So I probably won't hold this up. And I think holding up one little page doesn't do it justice. In there, it's a lot of stuff, but it's signed. Thank you.
Thank you. On Iran, are the negotiations still happening this week?
Yeah.
Where will they be? And what do you need to hear from
They're
Iran?
all over, but they are negotiating. They'd like to do something, and we'll see if something is going to be done. They had a chance to do something a while ago, and it didn't work out, and we did Midnight Hammer. I don't think they want that happening again, but they would like to negotiate. We are negotiating with them right now, yes.
Where will
Mr.
the-
President,
Where will the meeting be? It seems
I
like
can't tell you that.
Mr. President,
There's more than one meeting. Yep.
Mr. President, how was your meeting with Gustavo Petro earlier today? And did you come to any agreement on counter-narcotic efforts?
Yeah, we did. We worked on it, and we got along very well. He and I weren't exactly the best of friends, but I wasn't insulted because I never met him. I didn't know him at all. And we got along very well, and we're working on that. We're working on some other things too, including sanctions. And But we had a very good meeting.
So you did do an agreement?
I thought he was terrific. You know, he was very good. We got along great.
Mr. President, can you give us any update on how the talks are going for potential changes to the Department of Homeland Security? Have you agreed to any specifics?
Well, we have a secure border. In fact, we have 9 months now where nobody has come into our country illegally. Now, I don't know if I can believe that because, you know, you go from 25 million people to nobody, but the Democrats do that. You know, they're leaning left, the people that do that report. And for 9 months, they have said nobody has come into our, it is a strong, great border. We do have people coming into our country, but they're all coming in legally. You take a look at that and look at what was going on a year and a half ago on our border, where criminals were coming in, drug dealers were coming in, people from mental institutions were coming in. The worst, you know, they say the worst, I don't even know if I like the term, but the worst of the worst was coming into our country. And now we have virtually no, our country is, it's beautiful to see. Even if you go down, you know, some of you, I think were down there a couple of weeks ago, and you couldn't believe it, right? Because you were there 2 years ago.
10,000 a day.
And 10,000 a day. And now you didn't even see anybody. Nobody comes up with saving lives because nobody comes up. They have to come through the jungles and they're dying of all sorts of problems, including murder. And we have nobody coming in, and we're getting people out that we have 11,888 murderers who came into our country. We're getting them out fast. And the only place where there's a little bit of a problem, and I will tell you this, Minnesota, their crime because of us, because we've taken out thousands of criminals, their crime is down, not because of anybody else, it's because of us. Their crime is down. But all over the country, wherever we're involved, we're getting criminals out of our country, and the crime rate now is the lowest it's been since 1900. That's 125 years. And that's despite the fact with an open border stupid policy, 25 million people, in my opinion, came into our country. And many of those people should not have been allowed to come into our country.
On Ukraine, Mr. President, yesterday you were talking about how Vladimir Putin had agreed to a pause during the cold weather. Overnight, those attacks have started up again.
I know. It was Sunday. It was Sunday to Sunday, and it opened up, and he hit him hard last night. No, he agreed. He kept his word on that. It's a lot. You know, 1 week is, we'll take anything because it's really, really cold over there. But it was on Sunday, and he went from Sunday to Sunday.
Are you disappointed he didn't go further? Or go
yeah, I would like to. I want him to end the war. I spoke to him. I want him to end the war.
Mr. President, what exactly did you mean when you said that you should nationalize elections? And which 15 states are you talking about?
I want to see elections be honest. And if a state can't run an election, I think the people behind me should do something about it. Because, you know, if you think about it, a state is an agent for the federal government in elections. I don't know why the federal government doesn't do them anyway. But when you see some of these states about how horribly they run their elections, what a disgrace it is, I think the federal government, when you see crooked elections, and we had plenty of them, and by the way, we had them last time, but go to 2020 and look at the facts that are coming out. Rigged, crooked elections. If we have areas, take a look at Detroit, take a look at Pennsylvania, take a look at Philadelphia. You go take a look at Atlanta, look at some of the places that horrible corruption on elections. And the federal government should not allow that. The federal government should get involved. These are agents of the federal government to count the votes. If they can't count the votes legally and honestly, then somebody else should take over.
But the Constitution says it should be states that administer elections, Mr. President.
Yeah, they can, you know what? They can administer the election, but they have to do it honestly.
Are you open to negotiating on warrants when it comes to ICE? This is an ask from Senator Schumer. Requiring search warrants for ICE and immigration officials.
I haven't even thought of it. I'm not thinking about search warrants. Yeah, Lindsey Graham is going to answer that.
No, makes no sense. If we have to get a search warrant to get 15 million people out, Schumer's telling me he doesn't want them out. It's the most ridiculous idea. They do have some good ideas, I think. But I've got a better idea. It's your idea. In sanctuary cities. On immigration, I know what I'm talking about. I've got the scars to prove it. Y'all are playing like Biden didn't exist. Y'all won't tell the American people about Laken Riley. It's a one-sided debate. For 4 years, our border was obliterated. They let them come in by the tens of millions, and they want to go back that way. We're not going. So, Mr. President, stick to your guns. If you got reforms that make ICE better, more professional, talk to me. But you should embrace what I'm suggesting. As long as 12 states have sanctuary policy, they'll keep coming. Unfortunately, you won't be president forever. These magnets of illegal immigration have to go. There is no upside to sanctuary city unless you're a complete radical nut job. The cops hate it, fraud around sanctuary cities, and you're going to get more illegal immigration. We're going to have a debate. I've been trying to solve this problem, but what the Democrats are doing is they're not getting to the underlying problem. It's not Stephen Miller. It's not Chrissy Nome. It's not me. It's not you. It's policies that have been on the books that don't work. So if you want to debate on how to solve this problem, show up next week. I'm going to take President Trump's idea that it's time to end the insane policy of sanctuary cities. We're going to take it to the floor and we're going to vote, and people in November are going to get to see who they trust to keep the border secure. Schumer or Trump? I'm with Trump.
Mr. President. And by the way, I hope you're going to press that very hard. And the other thing, we are not, well, we are with you. I think everybody's with you. It's a sanctuary for criminals. That's who it is. They could make our lives so much easier. All they have to do is hand over their criminals, hand over people that came into our country illegally that are murderers, that came out of jails, that came out of mental institutions, that are drug dealers. I can't believe in Minnesota that they want to have murderers walking all over the streets. I just don't believe it. Maybe somebody says it's good politics. I don't think it's good politics. I think it's really bad. The other thing we can't lose sight of is you probably have in Minnesota, and it's worse in some places like California, $19 billion in fraud. And we're going to find out, we're very deep into that investigation. But we're not going to forget that. A lot of people think that a lot of this nonsense that's going on is to try and, hide what's going on with respect to the fraud. They have at least $19 billion. You're hearing 9. Now I'm hearing it's 19, and it's probably much more. So it's they talk about incompetence. I think it's not incompetence. I think it's just pure fraud. These are dishonest people. They're bad people. I think they hate our country, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. But don't let this hide the fact that you have tremendous fraud. And, if we find the fraud in this country, you'll have a balanced budget without even cutting anything. You'll literally have a balanced budget. Yeah, please.
Are you planning to work with President Petro to fight guerrilla groups and terrorist organizations in Venezuela?
Well, they want me to do that, and we will. We're getting along very well in Venezuela with the leadership. Very, very well. We took in 50 million barrels of oil. It's right now heading to Houston. And we're getting along very well with them, but we're going to work with them, yes.
Mr. President,
a few months ago, you had in your office here Peter Mandelson, the British ambassador. You were shaking hands with him over a trade deal. He's today been forced to resign from the House of Lords, the upper house of the British Parliament, over his links to Jeffrey Epstein. Just wondered if you had any reaction to that, since obviously he was here before.
I didn't know about it, but I really don't know too much about it. I know who he is. It's too bad. Speaking of Epstein, I will say this. A reporter named Wolf and Epstein conspired. This just came out yesterday in the millions of pages of documents, how crazy this is, conspired against me in order to fight like hell to make sure I lose the election. That's the only thing that was mentioned about me. Now, about Democrats, some really bad stuff, but about me, that Wolf, whoever Wolf is, he wrote a couple of books, and Epstein conspired against me. Did you know that, Mr. Senator? Did you know that? They conspired against me, so I lose the election, or worse. So that takes care of Epstein as far as Trump is concerned, but you got a lot of Democrats out there that are very much involved with Epstein. But I'll be honest with you, you got to get back to running the country, too. Millions and millions every week. When Epstein was alive, nobody cared about him. When he's dead, they care about him. but it's really a Democrat problem. It's not a Republican, it's a Democrat problem. The only problem Republicans have is that we have to get back to number one, running our country, and then number two, very importantly, letting the public know what a great job we're doing. We have the greatest economy in the history of the world. We have $18 trillion being spent. The record was $3 trillion many years ago, not by us, by another country. I won't say the country. Yeah, please.
Did you read those new files, Mr. President, that
Have you
came
been
out?
briefed on Savannah Guthrie's mom missing in Arizona?
I think it's terrible.
Would you commit to more federal agents like helping out on the search?
Sure,
or
I
anything
would.
like
I'm going to
that?
call her later on. I think it's a terrible thing. I always got along very good with Savannah. Very unusual situation, but we're going to find out.
Have you heard anything?
Yeah, what do you want?
On the Epstein files, you talked about Democrats who were in there. Elon Musk was also in there, and so was your Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and correspondence that he had with him. Did you read those new files that were published by the
No,
Department
I
of
didn't.
Justice?
I didn't. I have a lot of things I'm doing, a lot of things I'm doing. I don't know. You mentioned two names. I'm sure they're fine. Otherwise, it would have been major headlines.
A lot of women who are survivors of Epstein's are unhappy with those redactions that came out. Some of them, entire witness interviews are totally blacked out. Do you think
they're
that they
also
should be
unhappy
more
with the fact
transparent?
that they thought they released too much. I heard that, and you tell me something else. No, I think it's really time for the country to get onto something else. Really, now that nothing came out about me, other than there was a conspiracy against me, literally by Epstein and other people. But I think it's time now for the country to maybe get onto something else.
But what would you say to people
like
who feel like they haven't gotten
healthcare
justice, Mr. President?
Something that people care about. Yeah, what would you say? Go ahead,
What would you say to
are
the
so
survivors
bad.
who feel like they haven't gotten
You are
justice?
the worst reporter. No wonder CNN has no ratings because of people like you. She's a young woman. I don't think I've ever seen you smile. I've known you for 10 years. I don't think I've ever seen a smile
Well,
on
I'm
your face.
asking you about survivors.
You know
of
why?
Jeffrey
You know why you're not
Epstein, Mr.
smiling? Because you're not telling the truth, and you're a very dishonest organization, and they should be ashamed of you.
These are survivors of a sexual
You
abuse.
mentioned health care, and the bill that was just passed does not include your health care savings account. So this is a question for you and maybe for Mr. Speaker as
I'm
well.
so proud of the healthcare savings accounts because it's going to happen. And hopefully, instead of insurance, and I hope this happens, and I hope you guys can do it, let the insurance companies not do quite as well. They're going up 15, 16, 1700%. Think of it. The money should be paid directly to the people. Trillions of dollars goes out. The money should go to the people. They should buy their own health care. It can be in a health care, account, savings account, any account you want to make. The money should go to the people. The people should buy their own health care, and they're going to save a lot of money, and they're going to have much better health care. And it's very simple. The problem is the Democrats are owned by those insurance companies. They're owned lock, stock, and barrel. And the Democrats will never vote on it because the Republicans should get that through. And you know how you get it through? The filibuster. Get rid of the filibuster and start voting. Yes.
Mr. President, today we heard that the Clintons set deposition dates to testify before the House Oversight Committee. Any reaction to that related to the Epstein?
I think it's a shame, to be honest. I always liked him. Her, yeah. She's a very capable woman. She was better in debating than some of the other people, I will tell you that. She was smart woman. I hate to see it in many ways. I hate to see it. But, then I look at me. They went after me like... they wanted me to go to jail for the rest of my life. Then it turned out I was innocent, very innocent. I had a friend that said, a very smart friend, he's a very wealthy man, knows the life, streetwise guy. He said, you have to be the most honest person anywhere in the world because there's never been anybody who's been examined up and down. I have hundreds of thousands of pages of documents, millions of pages. With all of that, they found absolutely nothing wrong. Remember, his tax returns, they fought for years and years. And then the Supreme Court, I was surprised, they ruled I had to give my tax returns. I'm the only one that had to ever do that. But I had to give my tax returns. I gave my tax returns. They hired the best accounting firms in the world. They found nothing. And this friend of mine said, you have to be the most honest person in the world. He actually said, I'm referring to him. I'm a pretty honest guy, but I could have never withstood that. They've gone through millions and millions of pages, and here I sit winning an election in a landslide, winning the popular vote, winning all 7 swing states, winning 86% of the counties in the United States. That's why those maps that you see are all red. And so they tried to put me in jail. And I shouldn't feel this way, but I feel badly that they have to go through that. But then I say, but they did far worse than me. They wanted to put me in jail. Think of it. I was a very good president. We had a great first term, rebuilt the military, biggest tax cuts ever, biggest regulation cuts ever. But, you know, I will say this. I think I can say, what do you think, Lindsay? My second term is blowing my first term away. And my first term was really good.
Reagan plus.
Reagan plus, yeah. Well, whatever. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, press.
Thank you, press.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Let's go. Start moving. Thank you. Thank you. Let's go. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Keep moving. Thank you. Thank you, press. Go. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you. Let's go. Let's go. Thank you.
Senate will come to order. The chaplain, Dr. Black, will open the Senate with prayer.
Let us pray. Eternal God, we come to you for protection, mercy, and love. You have been our shelter through the storms of life, and your wisdom has been our shield from seen and unseen dangers. Thank you for being a helper for the helpless, placing us beyond the reach of the enemies of freedom. Bless our lawmakers as they remember that each day has enough trouble of its own. Give them the wisdom to live in day-tight compartments, to trust you to be their guide, and to place all of their tomorrows in your mighty hands. Strengthen us all to lift downcast lives, grieving spirits, and hopeless hearts. We pray in your matchless name. Amen.
Will you please join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. President, thank you.
You bet.
Under the previous order, the leadership time is reserved. Morning business is closed. Underneath the previous order, the Senate will proceed to executive session and resume consideration of the following nomination, which the clerk will report.
Nomination, the judiciary, Brian Charles Leah of Tennessee to be United States District Judge for the Western District of Tennessee.
Great Senator from Iowa.
Thank you, Mr. President. This year marks 6 years since the President and Congress approved the North American U.S.-Mexico-Canadian Agreement, USMCA for short. It's also the year that the three countries will review the agreement and decide on its future. That 6-year review is part of the agreement itself, so it must be done. So I would like to review the USMCA's impact in the first 6 years. The agreement has really enhanced U.S. exports. So President Trump has hailed the trade deal as, quote, a colossal victory for Iowa farmers, ranchers, energy workers, factory workers, and American workers in all 50 states. End of President Trump's quotation. What President Trump said there is 100% on target when he made that statement about the value of the USMCA to the U.S. economy. Since 2019, U.S. agriculture exports have increased by almost $35 billion, and nearly half of that $35 billion was from just two countries, Canada and Mexico. After 10 years of relative stagnation before the agreement, the U.S. agriculture exports to Mexico shot up by $11 billion between 2019 and 2024 to over a total of $30 billion. Today, Mexico is the #1 market for U.S. corn, and around 1/3 of all U.S. agriculture exports go to either Canada and Mexico. And remember, I said Mexico, the #1 market for U.S. corn. Iowa, my state, is #1 producer of corn, so you know how that benefits the farmers of Iowa. Now, to summarize, the U.S. agriculture exports pie has gotten bigger, and the biggest slices have been for Canada and Mexico because of the USMCA. This means bringing home more bacon for Iowa farmers. And when I mention bacon, Iowa is also the #1 pork producer of the 50 states. So what I've just said to you is why it's necessary to continue the great economic environment that the USMCA has produced for the United States. In other words, it's a no-brainer to get the USMCA extended and get it done very, very soon. President Trump needs to speak forcefully about the success of the USMCA along the same lines of the quote that I gave you earlier in my speech. We know it's his strong position. It should be easy to restate that to everybody. His positive words will take the uncertainty out of whether this agreement will be extended, and if it's not extended, the great economic loss to the United States. Uncertainty doesn't help anybody's economy. Such uncertainty is holding back our economic growth. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Leader.
Mr. President, we have 1 week and 1 day left to pass the Department of Homeland Security Appropriations Bill. Democrats demanded a tight timeline for the DHS continuing resolution. Republicans warned Democrats repeatedly that such a short timeline would be challenging, if not impossible. But to prevent Democrats from shutting down a big part of the government and denying paychecks to soldiers and federal workers, we ultimately gave it to them. Now, the onus is on Democrats to negotiate in good faith and reach an agreement quickly. Notice I said negotiate, Mr. President. This is not a blank check situation where Republicans just agree to a list of Democrat demands. Democrats had previously agreed to a Homeland Security Appropriations Bill, which included additional money for body cameras, as well as de-escalation training for immigration and customs enforcement officers, and additional oversight, I should say, of funds that have already been appropriated to DHS. Those are all things that were agreed upon when that bill was initially negotiated and supported by Democrats in the House and the Senate. Well, now, Mr. President, they've reopened negotiations, and that means taking up ideas and priorities from both sides. We need to have a serious discussion about the climate of harassment, and worse, that law enforcement officers have been facing for simply trying to do their jobs. We also need to address the issue of cooperation between local and federal law enforcement. Too many jurisdictions prohibit local law enforcement from cooperating with immigration and customs enforcement, a situation that makes things more dangerous for everyone. The President's border czar, Tom Homan, yesterday announced that the Department of Homeland Security will be withdrawing 700 federal agents from Minnesota, in large part because of increased cooperation from local government. So I hope my Democrat colleagues are ready to have some conversations with the White House about these and other issues. The White House has demonstrated that it's taking things seriously, and it has already resulted in body cams for all officers deployed to Minneapolis, and, as I said, the drawdown of federal agents thanks to the increased cooperation from local law enforcement that Tom Homan has facilitated. I want to see my Democrat colleagues take things seriously as well. Mr. President, I'd also like to remind Democrats that they are putting funding for some critical government agencies in jeopardy. TSA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, the Coast Guard, the Secret Service, the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center are all funded by the DHS appropriations bill. I think all Americans remember the travel disaster Democrats created by shutting down the government for 43 days last fall. The Democrats failed to agree to a DHS funding bill and shut down the TSA. As a result, there's a very good chance we could see more travel problems. I'd also like to remind my Democrat colleagues that the only way to get any reforms at ICE is to agree to a bill. A CR would not include any of the reforms already included, as I said earlier, in the DHS bill, which they helped negotiate and supported before they changed their mind and didn't support it. And a CR certainly wouldn't include any new reforms. The Democrat leader was complaining about the announcement about body cams for federal officers in Minneapolis, asking why it wasn't for the whole country. Well, Mr. President, I'd like to remind him that the DHS bill we negotiated already includes money for additional body cameras, somewhere on the order of $20 million for additional body cameras. The Democrat leader also complained that he doesn't trust the administration's reforms and that we need a law. Well, getting a law is well within Democrats' power. But again, Democrats have to be willing to actually reach an agreement. If they're coming to the table demanding a blank check or refusing to consider any measures but their own, they're likely to end up with nothing, which is fine if Democrats just want a political issue. But if they actually want to do something, then again, you're going to have to be willing to reach agreement with the White House on a final bill. 1 week and 1 day more, Mr. President. That is the timeline that the Democrats demanded, and I say demanded, and actually got. They were granted. After having negotiated a 6-bill package, which included the DHS appropriations bill, they decided, no, we're not going to do that. People want to blame the White House. They want to blame Republicans. Republicans had nothing to do with that. It passed the House, the 6-bill package, including the DHS appropriations bill, with 341 votes in the U.S. House of Representatives. Almost 80% of the entire House had cleared the DHS appropriations bill that was included in the package that the Senate was going to vote on that the House had already passed. And then it came over here, and the Democrats decided to blow it up. All of a sudden, the bill that they helped negotiate and write and be a part of, which included all the reforms that I mentioned, de-escalation training, body cameras, all those things were included in the bill that they said they didn't then want to pass. So they wanted a separate discussion about those issues and demanded that if we didn't give them that, they weren't going to vote for the package. And so they got what they wanted. And then we had a debate about how long should the CR go for to allow the sides to come together behind an agreement. And I suggested, Mr. President, our side suggested that perhaps 6 weeks would be a sufficient amount of time to have an earnest negotiation with all the parties at the table, and then time to execute actually passing whatever's agreed upon across the floor of the House and the Senate and getting on the President's desk. The Democrats demanded a 2-week CR, or they wouldn't vote for the package. And so they got what they wanted, which is a 2-week continuing resolution to fund the Department of Homeland Security and the other things I mentioned, FEMA, TSA, Coast Guard, all those things, for 2 weeks. And yet they haven't appeared yet to want to negotiate on all the things that they're demanding. We put out a list of demands yesterday. Our team, our folks have tried to get with them to sit down at the table and with the White House to reach an agreement that would enable the Department of Homeland Security Appropriations Bill to actually be passed here in the Senate and the House and sent to the President. But that is not right now even in the realm of possibility, Mr. President, because they're not engaging. We've got a now 1 week and 1 day time frame in which to do this, which is entirely unrealistic. And a Democrat Party, both in the House and the Senate, which seems a lot less interested in getting a solution to this than they do in having a political issue. Mr. President, if for some reason the Department of Homeland Security ends up in a shutdown, it is going to be totally on them. They will own it. We have tried repeatedly. They have agreed repeatedly before they decided not to agree and to demand something else, which they also got. But as of right now, we aren't anywhere close to having any sort of agreement that would enable us to fund the Department of Homeland Security. And so, Mr. President, I would hope that the Democrats will come to the table. The timeline that they asked for has been granted. And I hope that they are finally ready to get this done. It's important for the American people. All these agencies, Federal Emergency Management Agency, which oversees disasters in this country. We've got a number of weather-related disasters in this country that are going to require the able attention of FEMA. A lot of important agencies, Mr. President, that won't go funded if they remain in this posture of resisting anything that doesn't give them all of their demands. But worse yet, Mr. President, not only insisting on all the demands, most of which are, as they know, very unrealistic and unserious, but perhaps even more important than that, at least as of right now, not even willing to engage in a negotiation and discussion to try and reach a result. Mr. President, I hope that changes. I want to get this done. We want to get this done. I hope that there are Democrats who also want to get this done. And I know the President of the United States is prepared to sign a bill once these negotiations get underway and we reach an agreement. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Communities across the country. In cities like Minneapolis, Chicago, Phoenix, and elsewhere, federal agents have been running around with no identification, barging into homes without warrants, arresting people without due process, using force in ways that violate people's constitutional rights. On 2 occasions, American citizens were executed in broad daylight. No other police department in America, no city police, no sheriffs, no state police, or until recently, no federal police, would tolerate this kind of unrestrained barbarity. The American people are reacting. They're appalled. The data shows that overwhelmingly, even Republicans, non-MAGA Republicans in particular, are really about these violations of rights. They look at the pictures on TV and they say, this is not America. This is not America. Well, Donald Trump is realizing that Americans are turning against him on this issue. And it's not an immigration issue, it's a public safety issue. And the Republicans are on the wrong side of public safety right now. In fact, they're defending using tax dollars to create chaos in our cities instead of using those dollars to reduce costs of health care. Well, Donald Trump is getting it. He called me last week because he didn't want to have the 6 bills tied together. He knew Homeland Security was much more of a problem. And yesterday, in an interview, Trump said, quote, maybe we can use a little bit of a softer touch when it comes to ISIS tactics. Well, President Trump, if you want a softer touch, then the right answer is to lean on Republican leaders in Congress to pass the proposals Democrats have put together. Frankly, Republican leaders can't get it done without you, President Trump, because they're too scared and too gripped by the extreme right to do anything without your backing. Their immediate rejection of the Democrats' reasonable, common-sense proposals was totally predictable because the Republican leaders don't want ICE to have any accountability, totally adverse to what Americans believe and want. Passing legislation along the lines that Democrats have proposed is the right thing to do. Americans already support our ideas. They're not extreme. They mirror the same standards that law enforcement around the country already follows. The change, of course, will require legislation, or the public won't buy it. And legislation will require Donald Trump to push the Republicans into action. Leader Jeffries and I are ready to negotiate. Yesterday, we formally shared our specific demands with Republican leadership about what must happen to rein in ICE and stop the violence. And Democrats in the House and Senate are on the same exact page about what needs to be done to rein in ICE, end the violence. What must we do? We must see the end of roving patrols. People can't just be picked up on the street and thrown into some dark place with no explanation as to why, with no warrant. You can't barge into someone's home without a warrant. That's what we're saying. We need reasonable use of force policies, like states do. Every state has good rules for their police, for their sheriffs. Why should ICE be the only exception? Why should they be allowed to continue to terrorize our cities? And of course, we must have no secret police with masks off and cameras on. Speaker Johnson, he says that's wrong. Why? Explain it. Every local community, I'm sure the communities down in Louisiana, the sheriffs and state police have full identification of police officers. Yes, there's a problem with doxing, and that can easily be dealt with in the rare moment it has. It doesn't require all masks stay on. Everyone knows that. These are just excuses because they're afraid of the right wing who believe in this horrible stuff. We also make clear that certain places, like schools and churches and election places, should be off limits. We make it clear that American citizens cannot be arrested and detained without due process. Republicans, Thune, Leader Johnson, explain why you think it's okay for American citizens to be arrested and detained without any due process. Explain it. Just like you got to explain why you want to keep the masks on. Just like you want to explain why people can be arrested without warrants. Explain it. Why? But instead, just a quick, immediate dismissal because you're afraid to negotiate. Our demands are not crazy demands. It's the kind of stuff that applies to police departments everywhere. We're not going out on a limb saying federal officers should have identification. We know what we're talking about when we say that the Fourth Amendment, which protects against unreasonable search and seizure, should be obeyed. This is middle school civics class stuff we're dealing with here. So I'm just astounded to hear Republicans like Johnson and Republican senators, some of them, say our proposals are somehow political or non-starters. Political? Republicans think it's political and non-starters to say police should identify themselves? Explain that to America. It's not political, it's the Constitution, and it's the moral and right thing to do in a democratic country. It's about people's basic rights. It's about people's safety. If Republicans don't like our proposals, pouting is not going to make the chaos in the streets go away. The Republicans need to explain why to the American people. Let me say it again. If Republicans don't like our proposals, pouting is not enough. They need to explain why to the American people, because they don't have a good explanation. They're just afraid of the right wing, some of those crazies on the right who actually do want to rip up the Constitution. The truth is, Republicans cannot explain why our ideas are extreme, because they know deep down that what ICE is doing is indefensible, so they're stuck. If Republicans think it's political or extreme to say ICE agents ought to identify themselves, again, explain why to the American people. Johnson, explain why it's okay to do it in Louisiana, but it's not okay to do it here to have police identify themselves. If Republicans think it's political or extreme to say it's wrong for ICE agents to raid churches and schools and hospitals, oftentimes with no warrant and no cooperation with local police, they should explain why. If Republicans think the status quo with ICE is okay, they should back it up and say so to the American people. Now, most Americans, we Democrats, support law enforcement. We support our police. They have hard jobs. They put their lives on the line every day to keep us safe. What Americans don't support are the kind of abuses ICE is committing with impunity across communities. And police officers don't like it either. It gives them a bad name. ICE's behavior is not law enforcement. It's thuggery. ICE's behavior is not law enforcement. It's thuggery. It puts people in danger. President Trump knows things have to change. He should lean on Republicans in Congress to work with Democrats and deliver. This is a gut check moment for Congress. Americans expect nothing short of real, meaningful, common sense legislation. Americans expect us to rein in ICE and end the violence, which we can do right here, if only the Republicans cooperate and do the right thing. I yield the floor.
Call roll.
Ms. Alsbrooks.
Without objection.
Mr. President, last night the minority leader came out with a new list of demands designed to protect illegal immigrant criminals. We just heard him speak about it on the floor just a few minutes ago. The minority leader has said that he has 10 demands. Last week he had 3. Now he says he has 10. I read the fine print. It looks to me that this ballooning list is now up to 23 demands. The minority leader just said Republicans are calling the demands political. Well, I see them as radical and extreme. This is about funding the Department of Homeland Security for our nation, keeping our nation safe. The minority leader said Republicans can't explain why their demands are extreme. Well, I'll tell you why they're extreme, because they prioritize the safety of illegal immigrant criminals over the safety and security of the American people. And I would think a majority of Americans would see that as extreme and dangerous. Now, the minority leader might think that he has leverage to defund law enforcement. He's wrong. Border Patrol is funded. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is funded. But to me, what is reckless here from this far left wish list is it's closing the Federal Emergency Management Agency, closing them down. Coast Guard working without pay. TSA agents working without pay. Making our nation more vulnerable to cyber attacks. Those are all things that are funded by the Department of Homeland Security. So that's why I tell you that these demands are radical. It is the demand to change the rules regarding immigration enforcement warrants. And that's a big part of what they're talking about. When Democrats say they want to, quote, improve warrant procedures and standards, sounds nice. I'm not a lawyer. You study it, you look into it. Because you hear the Democrats use that phrase a lot. What Democrats won't tell you is the people that benefit from that are criminals. Here's what this Democrat demand actually does. I'll tell you because Senator Schumer refuses to tell us what it does. It ends immigration enforcement. Ends it. If Immigration and Customs Enforcement is forced to use what are called judicial warrants for each and every immigration arrest, America will become a sanctuary country. Not just a bunch of sanctuary cities in 13 different states. No, an entire sanctuary country. That's what they are pushing for. And that is their goal, and it is a destructive goal for our nation. Democrats want to abolish ICE. You've seen them the signs being carried in the streets. They want to abolish borders. They want to turn America into a sanctuary country for illegal immigrants, and specifically for illegal immigrant criminals who Joe Biden let flush into this country all the way through 4 years, 10,000 a day illegal immigrants coming into the nation. Democrats had their way. Removing illegal immigrants from our communities, from our streets, would be nearly impossible. Today, more than 1 million illegal immigrants have received from the courts a final court order for removal. Democrats want every single one of them to stay in our communities, to stay on our streets and in our neighborhoods all across the country forever. If you have a final removal order, you have already gone before an immigration judge, you presented your case, you've received due process, you exhausted every possible appeal. After a fair and thorough process, a judge has affirmed you may not stay in this country any longer. Finish. It is time for you to go. It's the law. Federal immigration officials have used administrative warrants for decades. Federal law provides for them. The Supreme Court upheld their constitutionality in 1960. We're talking 65 years ago. Federal circuit courts have reaffirmed their use in decade after decade after decade. Senate Democrats want to overturn long-term constitutional precedent. Why? Because Democrats seek to dismantle immigration enforcement completely. The Democrat demand is not a minor adjustment. If Democrats have their way, it would lead to fewer arrests, fewer removals, lead to more illegal immigrant criminals released onto the streets in our communities and into our neighborhoods. That's what this is about. The Senate should be very clear-eyed about the Democrats' goals and the dangerous consequences of the demands that are being made by Senator Schumer and the Democrats just to fund the Department of Homeland Security, something that we've agreed to do in the weeks prior to their decision a week ago to just say no. They said, nope, we're done. Joe Biden and the Democrats spent 4 years ignoring our nation's immigration laws. They are the party of wide open borders. They have been. They've proven it. They brought back catch and release. They abused parole powers, and they demonized law enforcement. They demonized the very men and women who devote their lives and commit their careers to keeping our nation safe. As a result, 10 million illegal immigrants flooded into the country. Our communities became less safe because Democrats refused to enforce the law. In Georgia, Laken Riley, a 22-year-old nursing student, she was murdered by an illegal immigrant. Her killer crossed into this country illegally in 2022. The Biden administration released that killer into our country instead of removing him. Before he killed Laken Riley, he was arrested in New York City for child endangerment. Somebody arrested in New York City for endangering a child. Despite his crime, what happens in New York City? He was released. Why? Because New York City is a sanctuary city, and now the governor there wants to make it a sanctuary state. Had her killer been in custody, Laken Riley would still be alive today. to finish their nursing training and be taking care of patients in their community. In North Carolina, 2 teenagers were killed by an illegal immigrant in a deadly car crash. The killer was driving drunk. His criminal record before the incident was lengthy criminal record. Yet before the crash, his other charges were dismissed by sanctuary cities. North Carolina's legislature passed multiple bills to require local police to get illegal immigrant criminals off the streets. So what happened? Well, North Carolina's pro-crime Democrat governor named Roy Cooper vetoed them all. So criminals are back on the streets thanks to a North Carolina pro-crime Democrat governor named Roy Cooper. 3 vetoes by Roy Cooper, Democrat governor of North Carolina, allowing illegal immigrant criminals to roam.
Wow. We have a very packed room here today. Thank you all so much for showing up and for joining. I apologize for the delay. The president and I were watching the press conference about the search for Savannah Guthrie's mother, which is just a heartbreaking situation. The president, as you all know, spoke directly with Savannah yesterday and told her that the federal government is here to help. Any requests that are made by state and local officials in the search of Miss Guthrie will absolutely be accommodated. I spoke with the FBI directly about that today as well. And our hearts and our prayers are with Savannah and her entire family as they search for her dear mother. I also have a quick scheduling announcement for all of you. Tonight at 7 p.m. during prime time, President Trump, Dr. Oz, and National Design Studio Director Joe Gebbia will officially unveil Trump RX, a state-of-the-art website for American consumers to purchase low-cost prescription drugs. This historic announcement will save millions of Americans their hard-earned money, so make sure to tune in tonight, and we will see all of you in the news media there. President Trump promised to restore law and order to the United States of America, and newly released data proves he is delivering overwhelmingly on this promise. A study from the Council on Criminal Justice shows that the murder rate across America's largest cities plummeted in 2025 to its lowest level since at least 1900. Again, let me repeat, to put this in perspective, this marks the largest single-year drop in murders in recorded history. This dramatic decline is what happens when a president secures the border, fully mobilizes federal law enforcement to arrest violent criminals, and aggressively deports the worst of the worst illegal aliens from our country. The numbers don't lie. Under President Trump in 2025, the FBI increased violent crime arrests by 100% compared to the prior year. The FBI also conducted more than 67,000 arrests from Inauguration Day 2025 to January 20th, 2026, which is 197% more arrests than the same period previously. The FBI also disrupted 1,800 gangs and criminal enterprises, a 210% increase from the year prior. The FBI has arrested 1,700 child predators and more than 300 human traffickers across the country. Since President Trump took office, 6 of the FBI's top 10 most wanted fugitives have been captured. Right here in our nation's capital, where you all live, so you know it well, whether you choose to report it or not, the president's efforts to make D.C. safe and beautiful have worked. As of last week, D.C. homicides were down 62%, motor vehicle theft down 53%, and 2025 had the fewest violent gun crimes of any year of available data in our nation's capital. For more proof that these tough on crime efforts are working, look at the president's Make Memphis Safe Again campaign. As of last week, there have been nearly 5,600 arrests made, and aggravated assaults are down 53%. Sexual assaults are down 53%, and robberies are down 70%. Again, that's just in the city of Memphis. 5,600 arrests have taken place because of this president and his Homeland Security Task Force that has surged into Memphis at the request of both the governor and the mayor in that city. A Democrat mayor, I will add. These are the results that can happen when Democrats and Republicans, when the federal government and state and local officials work together. And that's what Trump wants to see to improve public safety across our country. When you have a leader like President Trump who empowers good cops to be cops and to arrest bad criminals, American communities will become safer.
Many of the media outlets in this room have expressed shock and confusion at these remarkable statistics. The New York Times declared that, quote, no one knows for sure what's behind the staggering drop in the murder rate. The reason is very clear. It is President Trump's leadership and his unwavering commitment to law and order. The drop in crime is more proof that all that is required to improve public safety on our streets is a leader with the will to do what is necessary to protect law-abiding American citizens. The terror and chaos that was unleashed under Democrat rule is a choice. It's a choice to put violent criminals ahead of innocent Americans, a choice to force us all to live in fear because of soft on crime, liberal politicians, prosecutors, and judges who lack the basic willingness to do their jobs and put dangerous people behind bars. On November 5th, 2024, the American people made a resounding choice that they've had enough of that, and that's precisely why they reelected President Trump. So even as Democrats and the liberal media are engaged in hysteria about this administration arresting and deporting violent, criminal, illegal aliens, the undeniable truth is that deporting these individuals is one of the primary reasons why America's streets are safer today than they were 1 year ago when President Trump assumed office. Former President Biden and the Democrats left our borders wide open, and President Trump and the brave men and women of ICE are removing these dangerous criminals. So here are just a few recent examples. Number one, a Venezuelan national and active Tren de Aragua gang member with a rap sheet including homicide, assault, child cruelty, domestic violence, and property damage. This is an individual I can assure you not a single one of you in this room would want in your neighborhood, whether you admit it or not. He entered the U.S. in 2022, and he was released into our country by the Biden administration. He is no longer here, thanks to President Trump. An El Salvadorian national and known MS-13 associate, previously convicted of homicide, conspiracy to commit homicide, and kidnapping, arrested for arson, battery, armed carjacking, and assault. He entered illegally in 2016, was released by the Obama administration, and ICE just arrested him on January 8th, 2026. This example shows you how many criminal illegal aliens have been roaming American streets freely because of a lack of attention to this matter from the previous administration, and President Trump is cleaning up their mess. A Cuban national and blood gangs member convicted of multiple homicides and robbery. ICE arrested him on October 27th and removed him on January 6th, 2026. Arresting and deporting these types of illegal criminals is precisely what the American people voted for. And despite desperate recent attempts by Democrats and those in the media to undermine the president's deportation agenda, these efforts are failing. Brand new Harvard-Harris polling shows overwhelming support for President Trump's efforts to protect law-abiding citizens from criminal illegal aliens. Nearly 8 in 10 Americans say criminal illegal aliens should be deported. A solid majority also support deporting all illegal aliens, regardless of additional crimes. And more than 2 in 3 Americans back the Trump administration's common sense requirement that state and local officials cooperate with federal authorities and work to hand over criminal illegal aliens in local jails for swift deportation. Finally, to prevent another invasion of millions of illegal aliens from happening again, President Trump and Secretary Noem delivered the most secure border in American history. 0 illegal aliens were released into our homeland over the past 9 months. This is a truly remarkable achievement. Again, 0 illegal aliens released into the country in 9 months. This is staggering, and it deserves more attention from all of you. Overall, Customs and Border Protection recorded the lowest total encounters in agency history. Daily encounters have fallen by 95%, averaging just 250 apprehensions at the southern border a day. This is compared to over 5,100 daily apprehensions during the Biden years. It's a night and day difference because we finally have a president who enforces the law and lets our law enforcement do their noble jobs of protecting our homeland. When President Trump campaigned on making America safe again, this is exactly what he meant, and the numbers and the results speak for themselves. With that, I will open it up to questions today. We're going to start with Daniel Baldwin from One America News, who is here religiously covering the White House beat every day. So it's good to see you in a chair instead of standing up today. Daniel, thanks for being here, and why don't you kick us off?
Thank you, Caroline. It's an honor and a privilege to represent One America News in the new media seat. First question on the DHS funding bill. Funding runs out in the better part of 8 days or so. Democrats, at least verbally, are very dug in. What does the White House believe their end goal is when it comes to this funding fight, when it comes to immigration policy at large? What is their end goal when they're dug in a position like this at this point in time?
Well, the president has two end goals. One is to obviously keep the government funded and open, and that includes the Department of Homeland Security, which does not just touch upon ICE and Border Patrol, but also FEMA, the United States Coast Guard, the United States Secret Service. These are brave public servants who work to protect our homeland. The president wants these individuals to get paid. Secondly, when it comes to any discussions about immigration policy, the president is never going to waver in his commitment to allow immigration enforcement efforts in this country and to support ICE and Border Patrol and the deportation of illegal alien criminals. I know Senator Schumer and Leader Jeffries sent over a very long list of demands, some of which the administration is willing to discuss. Others don't seem like they are grounded in any common sense, and they are non-starters for this administration, but we're not going to negotiate policy from the podium. I'm going to allow the president to do that, and any final decisions that are made will be made ultimately by him. But rest assured, he is never going to allow law enforcement in the jobs that they do, the important jobs that they do, to be undermined.
And secondly, Caroline, the Department of Homeland Security put out a tweet a better part of an hour ago alleging that an illegal alien was involved in a major car wreck in Indiana, killing 4 people, and they allege that the suspect in question came in under the CBP-1 app under the Biden administration and received a commercial driver's license from the state of Pennsylvania. What is the White House's reaction to a situation like this? And what is the White House doing to crack down on cases like this where illegal aliens are obtaining commercial driver's licenses?
Yes, this is another abhorrent example of the border crisis over the past 4 years. And it again exemplifies why the administration must continue and will always continue to fully back and support ICE and Border Patrol and law enforcement in their removal of illegal alien criminals from our country. For those who don't know, and all of you should report on it, 4 Americans were tragically killed and lost their lives this week yet again from an illegal alien, an individual who was paroled into the country by the Biden administration using the CBP-1 app, which they created like it was a magic pass for Disneyland. That's not how immigration in this country should work. And this illegal alien from Kyrgyzstan was traveling on an Indiana highway, and he failed to brake for a slowed semi-truck in front of him. He swerved into the lane and he crashed into a van carrying 15 passengers, and 4 people were killed in that crash. This is another tragedy that could have been prevented if not for the wide open borders from the previous administration. That's why we now have a secure border. That's why this administration will continue to deport illegal aliens from our country. Thank you for being here. Garrett.
John, thank you for your comments and your prayers for the Guthrie family. I have 2 questions related to the president's interview with NBC yesterday.
Sure.
At one point in the interview, the president said that he believes states are accumulating the votes for who wins the election. He says if they, meaning the states, can't do it honestly and can't be done properly and timely, then something else has to happen. What did he mean by that? Is he suggesting that the federal government count votes in elections?
What the president is suggesting, and I just spoke to him about this, is that Republicans and Democrats in Congress should pass the Save America Act. This piece of legislation is going to ensure that states are abiding by federal election law by removing non-citizens from their voter rolls. In addition, the Save America Act will require voter ID to vote, and it will require proof of citizenship to register to vote. These are very common sense policies and proposals that 89% of our country agree with. So that's what the president is talking about. Again, I just spoke with him about this, and he's calling on both Republicans and Democrats to send the Save America Act, to pass it into law and to send it to his desk as quickly as possible.
The SAVE Act doesn't say anything about who counts votes, which has always been a state, a local, a county function. Why does he keep talking about somebody else, presumably the federal government, counting votes?
Because the SAVE Act directs states to remove non-citizens from their voter rolls. And we know in states across the country, the president is right to point this out. In states like California or in places like New York City, non-citizens are allowed to vote in state and local elections. And the federal government should absolutely do away with that. I don't think a single person in this room, if you really are being honest with yourselves, should agree that non-citizens should vote in American elections, no matter where that election is up and down the ticket. And so this is a piece of federal legislation that will help states ensure the integrity and the sanctity of their elections. And that's what the president wants. Peter.
Thanks, Caroline. President Trump posted about Nancy Guthrie that he is directing all federal law enforcement to be at the families and local law enforcement's complete disposal immediately. What should we expect to see from the federal government in coming days in the search to find Nancy Guthrie?
It's a very good question, Peter, and it's why I was on the phone with the FBI earlier this morning to ask that. And what they told me is that the FBI, again, is at the disposal of the state and local government. Whatever personnel or assets or resources that the state and local authorities and police need will be granted to them at the direction of the president, the FBI director, and the attorney general.
A different law enforcement issue. The FBI just found 1,000 samples inside an illegal biolab in Las Vegas. It is linked to a different biolab that was previously raided. There are ties to China. What does the president think the CCP might be up to here?
I haven't spoken to him about this specific investigation from the FBI, but I'm happy to. And I'm sure he's very glad that this is something the FBI discovered. And we'll make sure anyone who is involved in illegal activity will be held accountable.
And just one more about this weekend. At the Mar-a-Lago Super Bowl party, after the first two quarters, are the TVs going to be on the halftime show with Bad Bunny or the halftime show with Kid Rock?
I think the president would much prefer a Kid Rock performance over Bad Bunny. I must say that. Jennifer.
On the nuclear arms pact, we saw the president's post on that.
Yes.
But can you say, is there a temporary agreement with Russia to stand by the terms of the New START treaty while negotiations are happening?
Not to my knowledge. Again, to your point, Jennifer, I just do want to reiterate exactly what the president said. He wrote just moments ago, the United States is the most powerful country in the world. I completely rebuilt its military in my first term, including new and many refurbished nuclear weapons. I also added Space Force and now continue to rebuild our military at levels never seen before. We are even adding battleships, which are 100 times more powerful than the ones that roamed the seas during World War II. The Iowa, Missouri, Alabama, and others. I have stopped nuclear wars from breaking out across the world between Pakistan and India, Iran and Israel, and Russia and Ukraine, rather than extend New START, a badly negotiated deal by the United States, which I will add was renegotiated under former President Barack Obama, aside from everything else, is being grossly violated. The president wants to have our nuclear experts work on a new, improved, and modernized treaty that can last long into the future. And that's what the United States will continue to discuss with the Russians.
Peter. Thank you, Caroline. Sure. Did President Trump himself ever ask DNI Gabbard to head down to Fulton County, Georgia?
The president was asked and answered that question just yesterday. I've seen a lot of the media in this room get very caught up with the semantics of why Tulsi Gabbard is there. I will tell you why, and the president agrees with this, because election security is essential to national security. And as the director of national intelligence, it is a part of Ms. Gabbard's role to make sure that American elections are free of foreign interference and that American elections are safe and secure. And so the ODNI director is working with the FBI on this effort, and the president wholeheartedly supports both Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard in ensuring that American elections are safe, are secure, and are free of foreign intervention.
Is there any
Michael,
indication that
go
there's
ahead.
foreign
Caroline,
influence?
with federal law enforcement's involvement in the search
Well,
for Nancy Guthrie.
excuse me one second. It's the media who has said that there's Russian interference in American elections. You guys have been saying that for many, many years. So the people
in Fulton
well,
County.
the people in this room, considering that you all said for many years that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help Donald Trump, you should all be very happy that we finally have an administration that is looking into that, and we'll be happy to keep you posted. Michael.
With the FBI's involvement in the search for Nancy Guthrie now, has this search expanded nationwide outside of Arizona? And given Pima County's proximity to Mexico, is this now an international search?
Well, Michael, that would be a question for state and local authorities as they continue to oversee the investigation at this time. Again, the federal government and the FBI have offered any and all resources, but the state and local authorities are still leading the investigation. So I would direct you to them. I'm certainly not in a position to talk about it.
Another question, Caroline.
Sure.
Friday's talks with Iran, they were originally supposed to take place in Turkey. They've now been moved to Oman. Can you tell us the reason for that move?
Look, the president, diplomacy is always his first option when it comes to dealing with countries all around the world, whether it's our allies or our adversaries. And so Special Envoy Witkoff and Jared Kushner will be traveling to Oman for those talks tomorrow, and we will see what comes of those. The president is standing by for an update from them.
Caroline.
Sure, in the pink.
Thank you, Caroline. Cuban leader Miguel Diaz-Canel said today that Cuba would be willing to engage in dialogue with the United States only without pressure, without preconditions, on equal footing and with respect for sovereignty. But his government is denying what President Trump said, that they're all already holding talks. How would you respond to that?
I think the fact that the Cuban government is on its last leg and its country is about to collapse, they should be wise in their statements directed towards the president of the United States. But as I just reiterated, the president is always willing to engage in diplomacy, and I believe that's something that is taking place, in fact, with the Cuban government.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. So the Office of Personnel Management released a final rule today that makes it easier to fire government employees who are not doing their job, basically. Does the president believe that there are people in his government still that are not following his agenda?
That's a good question. I have not asked him about that. I mean, look, it's a very big government, right? There are thousands of people who work for the federal government here in Washington, D.C. This administration has been very much focused on ensuring that we have an efficient and productive workforce for the American taxpayer. There's not a day that goes by where we don't show up and realize we are public servants working on behalf of the American people, and everybody in the federal government best have that mindset, or they won't be welcome to work for this administration. So I think it's a good thing that the Office of Personnel Management put this rule out. I think if people aren't doing their jobs, if they aren't showing up for work, if they're not working hard on behalf of this president, they're not welcome to work for him at all.
The New York City mayor is dealing with a $12 billion budget deficit. If he texted President Trump, would the president bail him out?
I'll leave that answer to the president himself, Ed. Kristen, go ahead.
One more follow-up on Deanna Gabbard. You said that the president supports the fact that she was there, but last night when he was asked about it, he said he didn't know why she was there. He didn't say that he directed her. Can you clarify on that? Did she go by herself and he learned later and supports it?
Well, did you look at the full entirety of his response? I was in the room for that NBC interview, Kristen, and he just said exactly what I told you, which is that election security is essential to national security. We need to ensure that our elections are free and are fair and are free of foreign interference. And he spoke about how Ms. Tulsi Gabbard is involved in that effort. So you're taking like the first three words that he said to one question and not looking at his entire response.
On what you said about foreign interference, you talked about 2016 and Russian interference, but what we've learned from these Georgia officials is what was seized by the FBI were ballots from 2020 in this Fulton County election center. Do you have any evidence that there was international interference in the 2020 election in this election center?
What I do have evidence of, and what the media seems to be undermining, is why Tulsi Gabbard is there in the first place. And I would point you again to federal law that clearly assigns the DNI and the office with the statutory responsibility to lead counter intel matters related to election security. This includes assessing risks to election voting systems, software, voter registration databases, and more, and analyzing foreign interference. And the ODNI is responsible for supporting the White House interagency action to secure our elections through intel analysis and vulnerability assessments. And they should be routinely collaborating with agencies like the DHS, the DOJ, and the FBI. So as for that question, it would be better suited to ask the Director of National Intelligence herself in her office. But what I'm telling you is that it is more than appropriate. In fact, it is Tulsi Gabbard's job to ensure that our elections are safe and secure. And that's exactly what she's been doing on the ground in Georgia. And I don't understand why anyone in this room, considering you're all American citizens, I believe, and like to vote in our nation's elections, should have any problem with that whatsoever. Now,
Thank you, Caroline. The president said that the administration should take a softer approach on immigration enforcement. He's also suggested for months that some migrant workers should be spared from these raids based on what they're doing. Is the administration going to continue to conduct large worksite raids as it seeks to target violent criminals? And can you clarify, is the federal government going to continue doing these deportation operations in blue cities where authorities say they don't want them?
Well, first, again, to the president's answer yesterday, the full context of his answer was that he'd like to see a softer touch, but we are always going to remain tough. That softer touch the president is referring to is that cooperation that is necessary between state and local authorities and federal government authorities to ensure that we can continue deporting illegal aliens from our communities without tons of agents having to go after one illegal alien. If the states and the local governments just turn over their illegal aliens to ICE at jails, as they should be doing, it requires one agent to deport that one illegal alien who can then go on their way to their home country in a peaceful manner. The escalation that we've seen take place in Minnesota is a direct result of the refusal of state and local officials to cooperate with the federal government and with ICE, which has led to these hostile and dangerous environments. And so we don't want that. Again, the president wants direct cooperation, and that's what he was referring to. As for worksite raids, I don't broadcast any future action that may or may not happen from the Department of Homeland Security. But again, the president's focus and the administration's focus is on targeting illegal alien criminals, especially those who have committed heinous crimes in our country, as evidenced by the few illegal aliens that I just shared with you here today.
Will ICE and Border Patrol avoid going to other blue cities where the local officials are saying, we won't work with you, we don't want you here?
Well, first of all, those local officials should be wanting to work with ICE. Why would any official, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, want murderers and predators in your city? It makes zero sense. It's an untenable position. The only reason Democrats are taking that position now is because their entire party platform is just anti-Trump. It makes no sense for the American people. They should be calling this White House. They should be calling Secretary Noem. They should be calling Tom Homan, and they should be saying, we want to work with you to remove the worst of the worst criminals from our city. Please come here. So yes, ICE is going to continue to do their job in cities and communities across the country, but it certainly makes it much easier when we have that level of cooperation and corroboration at the state and local level. In places like Florida, where there has been the arrest of thousands, tens of thousands of illegal alien criminals. None of you talk about that, or none of you hear about that, because these operations are going seamlessly and peacefully. Why? Because there is an intimate cooperation between the state government and the federal government. And that's what the president wants to see in all 50 states. And the whites, yes.
Hi, thank you, Caroline. Over the weekend, President Trump said that he was giving a serious look at endorsing in the Texas Republican Senate primary. We know that Minnesota and Georgia also have competitive, crowded primaries. Is he giving those races a serious look as well?
Well, I'm not allowed to speak from the podium on any future political endorsements the president may or may not make, but I know that he is watching all of these races across the country quite carefully. I won't get ahead of him on any potential endorsements. John.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. Two questions for you about the continuing resolution that the president signed for the Department of Homeland Security. What would be the repercussions for all of the agencies under DHS if no agreement is reached on funding when that deadline approaches next Friday?
Well, there will be grave repercussions for all of those agencies, but more importantly, frankly, for the American people who those agencies serve. And that's exactly what the president and the White House want to avoid. Again, we want to keep the government funded. We want the Department of Homeland Security, of course, to be up and operationalized and continuing as necessary to protect our homeland, to secure our border, to ensure the brave men and women of the United States Coast Guard are getting paid, the brave men and women of the United States Secret Service who protect the president, the vice president, and frankly, all of you in this building every day continue to receive the paychecks that they so well deserve. And so that's why the White House will engage in these talks with Democrats. But again, the president is never going to cave on this administration's core promise to deport illegal aliens from our country.
You said, Caroline, in your statement that there are certain proposals that Democrats are putting up that are non-starters. What are some of those non-starters?
There are a few, and it's a very good question, but I won't negotiate from the podium. I know the White House will be engaged in direct, serious talks with Democrats on this important matter. Natalie.
Thank you. In addition to launching Trump RX tonight, Trump has said that he wants to meet with insurance companies to lower healthcare costs. Do you have any update on when those meetings are
Yes, he does want to meet with insurance companies. That meeting will take place. I don't have an update on when it will be on the schedule. But the purpose of that meeting will be to continue to negotiate with these companies to ensure that more money is going back to the American consumer. And you're all going to see that on full display tonight at 7 o'clock with the formal launch of Trump RX. I'm telling you, this is going to be a very cool and unique event. So everybody really should tune in.
Can you clarify what the president said on the Diego Garcia deal? He said he didn't like it. Now again, he says he's for it.
He spoke with Prime Minister Starmer directly. He understands Prime Minister Starmer's position, and he supports it. But as the president reiterated in that statement, of course, the United States reserves the right to protect our assets. We still have a military base, of course, on the island of Diego Garcia. And so the president reiterated to the prime minister and to all of you that the United States will never waver, if necessary, in protecting our assets anywhere in the world, but including on Diego Garcia. And he supports the prime minister's decision. Elizabeth.
Just on that one, Caroline, can I ask you?
Said that he's now seeking.
John, I'll go to you after.
The president said he's now seeking $1 billion from Harvard, considerably more than before. What changed here, and how are negotiations going?
Well, look, this has been an ongoing negotiation and, frankly, a frustrating negotiation for the president and the administration because we want a deal. And it's very unfortunate that Harvard has dragged its feet in understanding they need to rectify the wrongs and the illegal behavior that took place on their campus over the course of the past several years under the previous administration. And so the president wants a justified deal to correct for that criminal behavior that took place on their campus. He is now demanding $1 billion from Harvard University, and Secretary McMahon will be continuing to lead this negotiation and these talks.
John. Caroline, thank you. You mentioned some polling earlier that was very compelling on deportations. Rasmussen came out of the poll today, said 75% of Republicans want all illegals deported. It seems like the conversation has shifted again to focusing only on deporting illegal aliens who are criminals. Is the president still committed to deportations of the 20 million illegals that came here under Joe Biden, or are you starting to see that back?
Yes, and the president has always been committed to that, John. But we must prioritize, and the prioritization is on those tens of thousands of convicted criminals whom we know are still roaming our streets. ICE and Border Patrol and DHS have done a phenomenal job of removing tens of thousands of them. Actually, nearly 1 million people have been deported from our country over the past year, 2 million additional self-deportations. So nearly 3 million people have left the United States. But again, as you pointed out rightfully, Joe Biden and the Democrats allowed approximately 20 million people into our country illegally. So yes, of course, the president is committed to ensuring that America is and always will be a nation of laws.
Thank you, Caroline. Steve Bannon recently said, quote, "We're going to have ICE surround the polls come November." Is that something that the president is considering?
That's not something I've ever heard the president consider, no.
Guarantee to the American public that ICE will not be around polling locations or voting locations in November?
I can't guarantee that an ICE agent won't be around a polling location in November. I mean, that's frankly a very silly hypothetical question. But what I can tell you is I haven't heard the president discuss any formal plans to put ICE outside of polling locations. It's a disingenuous question.
Caroline, I had two questions regarding the DHS. The first one is one of the Democrats' main demands for DHS funding was to demask ICE agents. Is this something that the president is even considering?
Again, this is one of the specific points in the letter that went out by Senate Majority Leader Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. I won't negotiate the individual points from the podium, but it is obviously something the White House will be discussing with lawmakers on Capitol Hill in the coming days.
Is the administration concerned that the shakeup that we're seeing of DHS activity in Minneapolis could potentially embolden different obstructionist protesters around the country as they now have a playbook on how to get ICE out of their cities?
No, because what you saw yesterday with the drawdown of 700 agents only occurred because the condition that the president of the United States set for local states, local counties to turn over illegal aliens to ICE has been met. The vast majority of counties, nearly every single county now in Minnesota, has made an agreement to notify ICE when they are releasing an illegal criminal from their jail. This is a huge win for the administration. Again, it's a condition the president set out and has been met thanks to the tireless efforts of Mr. Homan. And as for the left-wing agitators who have been illegally obstructing ICE's immigration efforts. We are not letting that behavior go unnoticed or unpunished. In fact, just today, the Department of Homeland Security arrested this individual. He is a self-proclaimed Antifa member who has been threatening, doxing, harassing ICE. He called for the murder of federal law enforcement officers. He encouraged bloodshed in the streets of Minnesota. He proudly acclaimed affiliation with the domestic terrorist organization Antifa. And the Department of Justice, thanks to the great work of HSI and the FBI, was able to locate and arrest this individual today. So we are committed to enforcing our immigration laws. We want that level of cooperation from state and local officials. And if people are illegally obstructing our federal law enforcement operations, if they are targeting, doxing, harassing, and vilifying ICE agents, they are going to be held accountable, like this individual here, who again is a self-proclaimed member of Antifa. He is a domestic terrorist, and he will be held accountable in the United States.
Caroline, just to follow up on Garrett's earlier question, I mean, you've talked a lot about the SAVE Act. I know you spoke with the president about it before you came out here. The president has gone beyond that, though. He's talking about Republicans taking over elections, states are agents of the federal government. So just to be clear, is the president only calling on Congress to pass the SAVE Act, or does he want Republicans to go further than that before the midterm elections?
The president is calling on Republicans, again, and Democrats to pass the SAVE Act. I will reiterate, requirement for voter ID to vote. That should be something that no American should oppose. In fact, we know that the vast majority of Americans support it. Requiring proof of citizenship to register to vote, which is not hard to do. We should be able to do that in this country. If you want to register to vote in the United States of America, you have to be a citizen in the United States of America. And this piece of federal legislation will direct states to remove non-citizens from the voter rolls. I just had a conversation with the president about it.
Thank you, Caroline. I have two questions. Tariffs on South Korea. As you know, President Trump recently mentioned increasing tariffs on South Korea. When will the 25% tariffs increasing on South Korea begin? Secondly, what impact will this have on national security?
Sure. I don't have a timeline for you on that, but I will make sure that our trade team here at the White House gets you an answer swiftly and promptly. John.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Yesterday, President Trump, in the NBC interview, said that it bothers me that somebody is going after Bill Clinton. That somebody is the House Oversight Chairman, James Comer, a Republican. Why is the president bothered that they're investigating Bill Clinton and his Epstein ties?
Look, I think that the president has respect for the former president of the United States, Bill Clinton. He said yesterday himself they've shared a good relationship, and that's what he was reiterating in that NBC interview.
Caroline.
Go ahead.
Caroline.
Can you tell us a little bit about the agenda for tomorrow's talks with the Iranians? What will be the focus of the discussions?
Diplomacy moving forward. The president has obviously been quite clear in his demands of the Iranian regime. Zero nuclear capability is something he's been very explicit about, and he wants to see if a deal can be struck. And while these negotiations are taking place, I would remind the Iranian regime that the president has many options at his disposal, aside from diplomacy, as the commander-in-chief of the most powerful military in the history of the world. Washington Examiner, go ahead.
Lynchburg County, Virginia is the third local law enforcement is defying the blue government's demand that they no longer cooperate with ICE. There's a lot of red counties that are thumbing their nose at the blue government, blue states leadership, telling them not to cooperate with ICE. Will this administration support those counties in any way? Support them either through legal help or?
Absolutely. And if there is a county in this country, whether it's red or blue, that seeks to cooperate with the federal government to remove violent, illegal criminal aliens from their communities, this administration is here to help. You've heard the calls from the president himself on asking Democrats and Republicans across the country to call on the Trump administration to work with them, not against them, in the matter of public safety and securing our homeland. Thank you all very much. You'll hear directly from the president tonight at 7:00, and I hope everybody has a good weekend. Happy Super Bowl weekend. The president has wisely chosen not to make a prediction in Sunday night's game, but as a native girl from New Hampshire, go Patriots. Thank you, guys.
freely. And because of Governor Cooper's reckless vetoes, parents had to bury their teenage children. Mr. President, tragedies like this remind us that we all pay the price when liberal politicians favor illegal immigrant criminals over the safety of American citizens. That's exactly why Republicans passed the Laken-Riley Act. Because of that law, the Department of Homeland Security has detained an additional 20,000 illegal immigrants who otherwise would have been released back into our communities. When it comes to public safety, Democrats continue to fail the American people. Now, Senate Republicans will not accept changes that make our communities less safe. And when I read Senator Schumer's list of the 23 demands, he may call it 10, it started as 3. These are things that will make our communities less safe. Republicans are going to continue to stand on the side of safer and more secure communities. Now, Mr. President, on a separate matter. Mr. President, tomorrow in Milan, Italy, the 2026 Winter Olympics officially begins. Wyoming is once again helping lead Team USA to the top of the mountain, literally. 3 extraordinary Wyoming women are competing on the world's biggest stage. They're Jalen Koff, Breezy Johnson, and Anna Gibson. Now, Jalen Koff is from Alta, Wyoming, and she's competing in her 3rd Olympic Games. Skiing runs in her family. Both of her parents were professional mogul skiers. And Wyoming was thrilled, but not at all surprised, when she took home the silver medal at the 2022 Games. This year, she's going, and she's competing in the single and dual moguls, which is a new Olympic sport making its debut this year. Breezy Johnson of Jackson Hole, Wyoming, is competing in her 2nd Winter Olympics. The 2026 Olympics marks Breezy's return to alpine skiing. She had to withdraw from the 2022 Games after tearing her anterior cruciate ligament and meniscus. Known for her speed, she embodies the relentless drive of a champion and the ability to overcome adversity. Anna Gibson from Jackson Hole, Wyoming, will compete in ski mountaineering. Both Anna and ski mountaineering are making their Olympic debuts. In this event, athletes ski up a steep mountain before skiing back down the mountain. It is a grueling test of strength, endurance, and willpower. As a decorated cross-country runner, going to get her up the mountain, and Nordic skier, which will get her down the mountain, Anna is made for this challenge. My home state of Wyoming will be cheering on each and every one of these 3 incredible women, and will be watching them with pride. Few athletes ever know the honor of representing Team USA. Fewer still will be able to stand on the Olympic podium when the Star-Spangled Banner plays. These 3 Wyoming women are part of a very elite group. They remind us of the greatness, and that comes from the courage and from determination and from the willingness to chase something extraordinary. And I know, Mr. President, all of America wishes the very, very best for Team USA in the days and weeks ahead. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Senator from Iowa.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to honor a fellow Iowan and an exemplary leader, General James J. Mingus. Upon his retirement from the United States Army after more than 4 decades of distinguished service to our nation. Born in Spencer, Iowa, General Mingus was instilled with strong Midwestern values of hard work, service, grit, and teamwork. Long before he wore 4 stars on his shoulders, General Mingus took up the call to service in 1981 in the same way that so many of us did. He enlisted in the Iowa Army National Guard. It was there that he learned the mundane tasks of a young soldier at that time, shining black leather boots, making sure your uniform was ready for those weekend drills in a blustery cold Iowa. But he also learned the more impactful lessons in the National Guard, such as leadership and teamwork and caring for the brother to the left and right of you. His focus, even as a young soldier, was always on people. In 1985, he earned his commission in field artillery at Winona State University Reserve Officer Training Corps. When he entered active duty 2 years later, he transitioned to the infantry. From the outset, General Mingus's trajectory took him through some of the Army's most demanding assignments. He commanded and served in positions that required courage, initiative, and an unwavering sense of duty. Those early assignments prepared him for service in the 75th Ranger Regiment, where he served as an operations officer and later commanded the 4th Ranger Training Battalion, helping shape the Army's toughest trainees into elite warriors. Throughout his career, General Mingus was repeatedly entrusted with greater responsibility. This was a reflection of the confidence placed
At best, according to the Department of Justice's own admissions, maybe half of all the available Epstein files have been released. That means millions of documents, which contain the names of conspirators, financial records, travel logs, letters, emails. The public deserves to see that documents, the heinous crimes of Jeffrey Epstein and his co-conspirators, remain shrouded in darkness. These are things the public deserves to see, and they're shrouded in dark. And whatever materials have been released have often been redacted to an absurd degree. Hundreds of pages have been blotted out to the point that it's just a wall of black ink. That's it, a wall of black ink. Look at this. There are hundreds of pages that look just like this. This is not transparency. This is not what the law requires. This is a mockery of the truth and an insult to the survivors. What makes this all the more sickening is that in over 1,000 instances, the Justice Department failed to follow the law and leaked the identities of over 100 victims. But do you know who the Justice Department did seem to protect? Epstein's co-conspirators. You know who else the Justice Department seemed to protect? Donald Trump. What is Pam Bondi trying to hide? Enough is enough. Today I come to the floor to seek unanimous passage of a resolution directing the Senate to sue the Trump administration for violating the Epstein Files Transparency Act. 15 of my Democratic colleagues have joined in co-sponsoring this resolution, and I thank every single one of them for standing firm. I urge my Republican colleagues not to stand in the way today. It's the height of absurdity for Republicans that have supported the Epstein Files Transparency Act, but then go ahead and object to enforcing it. What hypocrisy. Objecting today would completely cancel out the whole point of Republicans supporting the law in the first place. And finally, the people who have lost the most, who have suffered the most, are Jeffrey Epstein's victims. With me, I have a letter from about 20 of the victims explaining how reckless and dangerous it was for DOJ to carelessly release victims' information, while going to great lengths to redact the names of co-conspirators. So I ask unanimous consent that this letter from Jeffrey Epstein survivors detailing the grave harms of the DOJ's careless release of victims' identities be entered in the congressional record.
Without objection.
Enough is enough. Congress spoke with one voice when it passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act. The deadline is long past, and the Trump Justice Department is still breaking the law. Senate Democrats are exhausting every possible avenue to force the administration to do what's already legally required to do: release the complete files, deliver transparency and justice finally to Epstein's victims. If the administration will not follow the law, which it isn't, the Senate must act. No one, not even the president, is above the law. The question before the Senate Republicans today is simple. Will they enforce the law that they helped pass, or object and help keep the Epstein files hidden? And so, as if in legislative session, and notwithstanding Rule 22, I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of S.Res. 597, that the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection?
Mr. President.
Majority Whip.
Reserving the right to object, this is another reckless political stunt designed to distract Americans from Democrats' dangerous plan to shut down the Department of Homeland Security. Now, that's a move that's, number one, going to delay Federal Emergency Management Agency preparedness, country needs right now. Number two, it's going to disrupt air travel. Number three, it's going to degrade the Coast Guard's ability to interdict deadly drugs. And number four, it's going to make us more vulnerable to cyber attacks. And therefore, Mr. President, I object.
Objection, sir.
Mr. President.
Senator Morgan.
I compliment the minority leader for coming forth and saying what the Senate has agreed to do, which is to force the Epstein files to be released, must be backed up by the force of law. Because we know that the administration failed to release half of the paperwork, some 3 million pages. We know that they blocked out whole pages in order to disguise, apparently, the protection of powerful men that they don't want drawn into this discussion. And then they proceeded to not redact the names of victims, as the law required. Let us not forget what this entire Epstein scandal is about. It's about powerful, wealthy men grooming, abusing, and raping young women and men. That's what it's about. I cannot understand for the life of me why the Republican leadership just objected for us to seek enforcement of the law that we passed unanimously here. Why is the Republican leadership protecting powerful men? Why are they protecting the administration, allowing 3 million pages to be held onto? Why are they allowing page after page after page to be blacked out to protect those powerful men? Why will they not respond to the fact that when these files were released, they did exactly the opposite of the law and failed to redact information about victims, re-victimizing so many? This is 1,000% unacceptable, and it's unacceptable to our values as a nation, our values which talk about equal justice under law. That's why, by unanimous consent, we said those files must be released. But it's meaningless if the administration simply chooses not to comply, and then my Republican leadership colleagues proceed to block the ability to enforce what the Senate agreed to pursue: accountability, justice for the victims, transparency over this horrific scandal. Mr. President, I hope my Republican colleagues will reconsider their objection, because what they've just done is wrong, morally wrong, and wrong under the values of equal justice under law, wrong under the values of justice for those who have been victimized, wrong under the value of accountability for the perpetrators. Thank you.
Senator Texas.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to speak for up to 15 minutes prior to the scheduled roll call vote.
Without objection.
So, Mr. President, I'd like to talk about a topic that may seem irrelevant to the average person at first glance, but actually affects all of us a great deal more than we might imagine. A tiny but vicious parasite known as the New World screwworm is infecting cattle across Mexico, and it's getting closer and closer to the United States by the minute. Of course, many know that Texas ranks among the actually first in the nation for cattle production. We proudly represent nearly 15% of total cattle production in the United States, generating more than $11 billion in cash receipts. So the Texas cattle industry is obviously very concerned about the spread of the New World screwworm. This parasite lays its eggs in the wounds of warm-blooded animals, particularly livestock. The larva burrows into the openings, creating infections that, left untreated, can cause animals to die within 1 week. We do not have vaccinations, unfortunately, to prevent screwworm infections, so outbreaks in cattle herds require labor-intensive daily inspections of livestock to make sure they've not been infested. Now, some may be wondering, that sounds pretty horrific, but what does it have to do with me? Well, the truth is, this little pest, this vicious pest, touches all of our lives one way or the other. If the New World screwworm spreads to Texas, infecting cattle and killing livestock, the already high price of beef will continue to increase. And of course, as we're all focused on kitchen table issues and affordability, that's the last thing we need. That means that anyone who enjoys a steak or hamburger will be staring at higher prices in their local restaurant, or at the drive-thru at their favorite fast food chain, or at the grocery store. Anyone planning a nice Valentine's Day dinner in a few weeks should listen up and perhaps budget accordingly. Unfortunately, the New World screwworm is quickly spreading. Since 2023, there have been outbreaks of this deadly insect in Panama, Nicaragua, Honduras, Guatemala, Belize, El Salvador, and Costa Rica. Costa Rica declared the New World screwworm a national emergency in 2024. That same year, the fly made its way to Mexico, which, of course, given our proximity to Mexico, has raised concerns among Texas cattle ranchers that it may soon make its way across the border and lead to an outbreak in our state, and not stop there. At the end of last year, a case of New World screwworm was reported less than 400 miles south of the U.S.-Mexico border. Fortunately, President Trump and U.S. Department of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, has made defeating the New World screwworm a priority. Our federal government's response to this threat spans multiple avenues, including emergency response planning, sterile fly production and dispersal efforts, as well as targeted initiatives at surveillance and research. I've been working closely with the USDA and other stakeholders to promote these efforts, and I've introduced legislation to authorize funding to deal with these measures. First of all, the USDA is partnering with state and local governments to ensure that the United States is prepared for a potential outbreak. This means working across federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial agencies to update emergency response plans, including or ensuring that responders are trained and ready. They are also supporting hands-on training and simulations at all levels of government to practice rapid, coordinated responses in the event of an outbreak. And they're ensuring that we have effective treatments available for both animals and humans so that veterinarians and healthcare professionals can act quickly if necessary. This parasite doesn't just affect cattle, it affects human beings too, and it's a horrific, horrific thing. Secondly, USDA is investing significantly in the renovation and construction of new sterile fly facilities in both the United States and Mexico to stop the screwworm. We know that the use of sterile flies was effective during the last outbreak of the New World screwworm in North America, which happened in the 1960s. The sterile male fly mates with female flies who only once during their lifetime. And so by releasing a large number of sterile male flies, the population can be stopped in its tracks. This approach worked to eradicate these deadly infestations in the 60s, and I'm hopeful it will work again. I'm confident it will once implemented now in the 2020s. The USDA is investing $21 million to help renovate and convert an existing fruit fly facility in Metapa, Mexico. Once complete, this facility is expected to produce an additional 60 to 100 million sterile flies per week. With continued support from technical experts at USDA, Mexico expects production to begin as early as the summer of 2026. Last November, the USDA opened a sterile fly dispersal facility in Tampico, Mexico. This facility allows USDA to disperse sterile flies aerially across northeastern Mexico, including Nuevo Leon. In addition to revamping and developing facilities in Mexico, the USDA is also working to ensure that we have a sterile fly facility here in the United States. Planning is currently underway with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to construct a domestic sterile fly production facility in South Texas. This facility has a projected capacity of 300 million sterile flies per week. It will be the only U.S.-based sterile fly production facility and will work in tandem with facilities in Panama and Mexico to help eradicate this pest and protect American agriculture. But Secretary Rollins' efforts haven't stopped there. The USDA is also investing in surveillance capabilities to try to monitor the spread, as well as research to identify new solutions. The USDA has deployed over 100 traps and lures across high-risk areas in the border states and is leveraging thousands of insect traps all along the southern border. Tens of thousands of flies from traps in all locations have been submitted to our National Veterinary Services laboratories for identification, thankfully with zero new world screwworm detection so far. In Texas, the USDA examines all wildlife for signs of infection. To date, more than 6,600 wild animals across 28 species have been examined, here again, thankfully, with no evidence of new world screwworm found. Finally, USDA has announced the new World Screwworm Grand Challenge, which will prevent the pest's northward spread and safeguard America's food supply by investing in projects that enhance sterile fly production, develop new traps and lures, and develop increased understanding of potential treatments that could be stockpiled and used here in the United States if necessary. So while the New World Screwworm poses a direct threat to cattle ranchers, all of us who enjoy a good hamburger or a steak, I think this should be encouraging news. So the fly has yet to land here in the United States, but it's close, and we're taking active steps to prevent its continued northward spread. I'm confident that under Secretary Rollins and President Trump's leadership, we will be prepared to meet this nasty parasite if it arrives in the United States. Texas cattle ranchers and beef lovers alike can rest assured knowing that this Secretary Rollins and President Trump and the United States Congress are on the job. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
The senator from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to speak about an issue that is critically important to millions of Americans: how our federal government responds when disaster strikes, and whether communities can quickly receive the help they are promised in a timely and transparent manner. As someone from the great state of Florida, who is no stranger to natural disasters, we know how vital emergency recovery assistance is after disasters like hurricanes. Unfortunately, we discover that recovery assistance, public assistance, can be delayed for years. And that is very hard for communities that rely on that essential funding to recover. As a United States Senator, it's important to me to fight on behalf of Floridians to help aid in these recovery efforts and make sure that if communities are entitled to public monies to help them, that those are efficiently received. Because recovery doesn't end the day after a storm. After major hurricane strikes, like we've seen in back-to-back years in the state of Florida, it can take years to get communities back to normal. And the process can be onerous and confusing for leaders and communities. So to streamline it and make it more clear, I introduced legislation called the TRACK Act. I introduced this along with Senator Alsobrooks. The Transparency and Recovery Assistance and Claims Knowledge Act would implement a status tracker on the FEMA website. And this is so victims of disaster can have easily available knowledge and insight as those claims progress. As I travel around the state of Florida, I continue to hear from folks that not just want more transparency, but need that as they advocate on behalf of their communities. Just a little more insight into the aid process when they are recovering from these catastrophes. While FEMA is making incredible strides under President Trump's leadership, the TRACK Act will bring more sunshine, more transparency. After disaster strikes, the most important thing is to get help to those who need it as soon as possible. And this bill will help us do just that. And while transparency and accountability are essential, they must also be paired with real action and real results. And so I am so proud to announce and inform my fellow Floridians that following very productive meetings with DHS, I was able to secure nearly $500 million in FEMA public assistance funding, which was released, totaling in 535 projects across 14 disasters. And these had been requested for years. And this is thanks to the advocacy and coordination from folks all across my state, from Bay County to Broward County, city managers, mayors, constituents. Truly, it was all of us working together to bring this to the attention of those here in Washington to not delay these funds. And we're just getting started. I want to thank President Trump and his administration, his leadership for standing with Floridians as we recover from these natural disasters. Indeed, I believe Floridians and their participation in coming to Washington and meeting with their representatives and making sure that they are heard by their government, the people's government, that is why we have seen progress. And if there's one thing I can say, and I continue to be inspired as Florida's newest U.S. Senator, government will only work if people remain engaged with their government. If we, the people, remain engaged with the representatives that serve us, we, the people, are an essential part of our republic, working. And so I'm proud to make this announcement about these monies being released to help Florida recover, to further strengthen our state. But indeed, it is just an announcement, because while I was the voice of so many, it was their work, their advocacy, them being a part of their government that got this done. Since becoming a senator, I have been inspired by so many across my state that want to help in the administration of the people's government. They have shared their struggles in getting federal aid. They have shared their needs as a result of natural disasters, hurricanes, flooding, and all of that went into making this a reality. And I am so proud to have worked to secure these long-awaited funds for my state. And this urgency is why I'm also urging my colleagues to join me in supporting the TRACK Act. It will improve transparency between Washington and communities back home. Indeed, it will allow Americans to be more a part of their government. Mr. President, thank you so much for giving me this time, and I yield back.
Senator from Indiana is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are about to vote on the confirmation of Mr. Justin Olson, President Trump's nominee to serve as a judge on the United States District Court for the Southern District of Indiana. Justin is President Trump's first judicial nominee in Indiana of the second Trump administration. I hope all of my colleagues will join me in voting to confirm Justin. He is more than qualified for this position. I had never met or heard of Justin before this process, but let me just say that from the very first time that I met with him, I knew he'd make a great judge.
I was really impressed by him, and I'm grateful that President Trump nominated him. Together with his wife, Leah, Justin is the proud father of 5 young children, and I enjoyed spending time with him recently when they were here to visit DC for Justin's hearing. Outside of his impressive legal career, Justin is an active member of his church, his community where he served as an elder and taught children Sunday school. Justin is a graduate of Grove City College and the Maurer School of Law at Indiana University, Bloomington. After graduating, Justin served his country in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Indianapolis. During his time in the U.S. Attorney's Office, Justin earned a stellar reputation for his incredible work ethic and his character. Before his time in the U.S. Attorney's Office, Justin earned a prestigious clerkship with the Chief Justice of the Indiana Supreme Court. It's very clear that Justin has all of the qualifications to serve on the bench. But beyond his paper resume, Justin has the qualities that I think are most important in a judge. He cares deeply about America and American values. He especially cares about equality. Mr. President, we all watched as the University of Pennsylvania and the NCAA allowed a man to dominate women's swimming. We all saw just how unfair and disgraceful that was. Justin has been part of the legal team that is suing Penn and the NCAA and other schools that have allowed men to compete in women's sports. Justin has also been part of the team that is representing Riley Gaines and other female athletes who have been forced to compete against those men and to share private spaces with them. Justin and his legal team have sought justice for those young women who have been robbed of medals, of dignity, and their safety. In fact, I think it's really incredible that Justin's confirmation comes one day after National Girls and Women's in Sports Day. And I think I can think of no one better prepared to make sure that women's sports are only for women than him, Justin Olson. Justin has also represented a group that's very important to me, and that's the Turning Point USA's chapter at IU Bloomington, my alma mater. Justin has defended that group's right to express conservative ideas on college campuses, and I have no doubt that Justin would make Charlie Kirk proud. Earlier in Justin's career, before he even graduated law school, Justin was already writing scholarly papers in support of states' rights to protect unborn children. Mr. President, what I want in a judge, above all else, is courage. I want judges, especially in my home state of Indiana, who are not afraid to stand up for truth and who are willing to say things that others are afraid to say. Really, anyone can say the right thing, but I want judges who have done the right thing, especially when it's hard or unpopular. Well, look no further than Justin Olson. He has always done the right thing, even when it was hard. He's fought for women's rights, for the equal application of civil rights law, and for American liberties. Mr. President, our nation is at a turning point. We need judges who believe in the American project and its goodness, not judges that are just like Justice Thomas and Justice Alito. And we need judges who will not just uphold the Constitution, but who will cherish it. Justin Olson is that type of person. I'm very pleased that President Trump nominated Justin to serve on the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Indiana. It was my honor to introduce him at his confirmation hearing, and it will be my honor to vote in favor of his confirmation in just a few moments. He's the right person for the job. I can't wait to call him Judge Olson. With that, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the previously scheduled roll call vote begin immediately.
Without objection. The question occurs in the nomination. Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsop-Brooks, Ms. Baldwin, Mr. Banks.
I should say, Senate, close your motion to the desk.
The clerk will report. Close your motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the nomination of Daniel E. Burrows of Colorado to be an Assistant Attorney General. Signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask consent to read the names be waived.
Without objection.
And I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to follow the following nominations in block. Calendar number 646, and all nominations on the Secretary's desk. That the nominations be confirmed in block, the motion to be considered made laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate, that no further motions be in order to any of the nominations of the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action, the Senate then resume legislative session.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate be in a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the consideration of SRS 600 submitted earlier today.
The clerk will report. Senate Resolution 600, recognizing January 2026 as National Mentoring Month. Is there objection to proceeding to the measure? Without objection, the Senate will proceed.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, and the motion to reconsider be considered and made laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Without objection.
And I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on the Judiciary be discharged from further consideration. The Senate now proceed to consideration of SCON Res 25.
The clerk will report.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 25, recognizing the 15th anniversary of the January 8, 2011 Tucson, Arizona shooting and honoring the survivors and victims and so forth.
Is there objection to proceeding to the measure? Without objection, the committee is discharged and the Senate shall proceed.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent the concurrent resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, and the motion to reconsider be considered and made laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes its business today, it stand adjourned until 3 p.m. on Monday, February the 9th, following the prayer and pledge. The journal proceedings be approved today. The morning hour be deemed expired. The time for 2 leaders be reserved for the use later in the day. And the Senate be in a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each. Finally, notwithstanding Rule 22, the closure motion with respect to calendar number 608, Daniel Burrows, ripen at 5:30 p.m.
Without objection.
Mr. President, if there's no further business to come before the Senate, I ask that it stand adjourned under the previous order following the remarks of Senator Grassley.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
I recognize the great senator from Iowa.
today I'm here to again speak about the New York Times' anti-whistleblower reporting. Obviously, it's very misleading. In a January 18th, 2026, Glenn Thrush, Alan Foyer, and Adam Goldman gave another big wet kiss to their fired friends from the Biden Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And they did so in an effort to intimidate, to smear, and to discredit brave and patriotic whistleblowers. This has now become a pattern of conduct by the New York Times dating back to articles starting in 2023. On January the 30th, 2025, Alan Foyer and Adam Goldman mischaracterized my and Senator Johnston's Arctic Frost disclosures by saying, quote, messages showed that the FBI investigators took normal bureaucratic steps and precautions, end of quote, when opening the case. Now, was this supposed to be an opinion piece on behalf of terminated FBI agents or a real news article? Normal steps weren't taken. As I noted in my February 3rd, 2025 floor speech about FBI agent Thibault, quote, does the New York Times truly believe that it's normal for an assistant special agent in charge to prepare case predication for the opening of an investigation and then feed it to a street agent? Is it normal for an assistant special agent in charge responsible for the most sensitive political investigations in the FBI to be forced to resign for partnership on the job or partisanship on the job and then be found to have violated the Hatch Act for that same partisanship? End of my quote. These two New York Times articles are merely examples out of others that could be addressed with the same rebuttals. So in the interest of time, I'll only address the January 18th, 2026 article that I came here to discuss with my colleagues. In that article, Thrush, Foyer, and Goldman issued the same slobbering defense of fired FBI agents whose emails Senator Johnson and I made public. So who does the Times end up attacking? They've chosen this senator, and they've also chosen to attack my whistleblowers. First, Thrush, Foyer, and Goldman did get something right. Can you believe that? They said the FBI is producing records, quote, in response to longstanding inquiries by Republicans on Capitol Hill, end of quote. The House and Senate have finally begun to receive responsive productions to our oversight request, as the New York Times has correctly stated. Some of those requests date back many years. Indeed, some requests date back to the first Trump administration. This isn't a scandal the Times would like to create. The Justice Department and the FBI have an obligation to respond to congressional inquiries. To Attorney General Bondi and FBI Director Patel's credit, they've done better in that regard than any of their predecessors, both Republican presidents and Democrat presidents. Now, am I fully satisfied? Of course not. but Bondi and Patel deserve credit. And if the Biden administration had done the same, I would be given the Biden administration credit as well. By and large, the records I've made public this and the last Congress are directly from whistleblowers in an unredacted form to which my office applied limited redactions. Or the records are from government in response to whistleblower disclosures that I have shared. There's been examples this Congress and last where the government had no idea what records were in the files of the executive branch of government until I transmitted whistleblower disclosures to that same executive branch. The most recent being the email about an FBI agent wanting to criminally investigate Elon Musk. This, too, is not a scandal that the Times would like to imply, because that is called good government oversight, and I have done good government oversight all my career in the Senate. Second, the Times said I called the raid at Mar-a-Lago, where the FBI reportedly searched the rooms of the First Lady and Barron Trump, a miscarriage of justice. Of course, when the Times said that, they didn't include my full tweet. They left out the beginning of the sentence where I said, quote unquote, based on the records. Those records showed that the FBI agents had many concerns about the raid and, quote, will not do, end quote, the search warrant unless the deputy director provided direction. And the law provides that the deputy director must be involved in that. These are records that were uncovered or were covered up by the Biden administration. Indeed, the public ought to know and give credit to those FBI agents for expressing their concerns and doing it in writing. In other words, following what the law requires. I gave the same credit to FBI agents who were obstructed by their leadership and then Secretary of State John Kerry during the Obama administration. For example, at that time, I released a majority staff report just last year. That report made public FBI emails that showed agents tried to arrest high-level Iranian, but were stopped from doing that arrest. Those agents were stopped then from doing their job because of political considerations relating to the 2015 Iran nuclear deal that President Obama was so intent upon getting finalized. And lastly, I released records this year showing FBI agents wanted to investigate election matters, but were obstructed. Those agents created an investigative document that was suppressed in part because the information would contradict then FBI Director Wray's testimony. The records show real frustration among FBI rank and file. Again, I made this information public to inform the American people and also to give due credit to those agents standing up for their work and following the law. Now, relating back to the Times article, the third issue to raise is that Thrush, Foyer, and Goldman did something unforgivable. That unforgivable thing was their article essentially accusing my whistleblowers of violating the law. And it does so in part by citing to a complaint filed by J.P. Cooney and Molly Gaston. These were two of Jack Smith's partisan prosecutors with a mission to put President Trump in prison when he was a private citizen between his two terms of office. J.P. Cooney and Monson reportedly accused the whistleblower disclosure of violating grand jury testimony when I obtained 197 of Jack Smith's subpoenas, wide-ranging subpoenas that violated the privacy of a lot of people, including a lot of members of the Senate and Congress. So Senator Johnson and I then made these subpoenas public, almost 2,000 pages of information, and that information exposed that Jack Smith, the prosecutor, and his team targeted over 400 Republican individuals and Republican and conservative organizations. In some case, Prosecutor Smith and his team sought communications with the media and the legislative branch. J.P. Cooney and Molly Gaston were a part of Jack Smith's team. So that reported complaint that they filed against my whistleblowers is littered with a lot of conflict of interest. But let's focus on this. Prosecutor Smith and his team sought communications with the media. Instead of the New York Times investigating and reporting on that major constitutional red flag, the Times brushes it aside and gladly runs with the false accusations from Cooney and Gaston against my whistleblowers. And in doing so, the Times also linked a 2020 Justice Department opinion memo to the article to try and support Cooney and Gaston's whistleblower chilling efforts. But the Department of Justice was scoped to, quote, leaks to the press of confidential information concerning prosecutorial decision-making, end of quote. The whistleblower disclosures were to Congress, not to the media. The same Department of Justice opinion also says in footnote number 2 that a separate statutory provision exists that, quote, protects disclosure to Congress using significantly different language and raises distinct issues that we don't discuss in this opinion, end of quote. The same Department of Justice opinion also says in part that an employee is provided whistleblower protection, quote, when the employee reasonably believes that the disclosure reveals a violation of law or rules or exposes serious wrongdoing as defined by statute, end of quote. Threich, Boyer, and Goldman opinion piece fails 3 ways. They misled the public by creating a false narrative that whistleblower disclosures provided to me and Senator Johnson were somehow illegal. Moreover, a fundamental precept of whistleblowing's the First Amendment. I thought the New York Times and its left-leaning compatriots loved the First Amendment. Here in this January 18 article, the Times shreds the First Amendment and in doing so undermines and devalues patriotic whistleblowers. That's a historic disgrace that'll age very poorly for these authors, their editors, and the New York Times at large. The May 18th or January 18th article also argues that my critics say these whistleblowers won't face reprisal because Trump's in office. Reprisal isn't a conditioned precedent to be a whistleblower. And how dare the Times make any insinuation that my whistleblowers haven't put themselves at risk. Whether there's a Republican or Democrat running the White House, whistleblowers always face real risk, ruining themselves professionally, losing their job, all that and more. And my whistleblowers have faced years of risk because their disclosures to me have occurred over a period of years, not just during the Trump administration. Here too, the Times and the authors try very hard to undercut the assertion that my whistleblowers are protected by law. It's an act done to chill, to intimidate, and smear patriotic government workers. In closing, perhaps the most disappointing element of this article is the quote from the Government Accountability Project. The Government Accountability Project is a group that I've worked with for decades on legislation and whistleblowers, and I consider them a very fine organization, not only helping whistleblowers, but helping all of Congress in our responsibility of oversight to see that the executive branch faithfully executes the laws according to the constitutional requirement. Government Accountability Project said this to the Times about my whistleblowers not facing any risk of reprisal. Quote, there's no risk, given that it looks like the entities who ordinarily might retaliate apparently might be behind the release, end of quote. This is a shameful statement for the New York Times and their authors to make. So my office approached the Government Accountability Project, and this is what they told us. First, the Government Accountability Project apologized. They said about the New York Times article, quote, it's not something the Government Accountability Project wanted to have our organization part of, end of quote. Second, the Government Accountability Project said The quoted employee, quote, is a contract lawyer who isn't authorized to speak for the organization beyond his clients, end of quote. The Government Accountability Project asks the Times to make that correction, but, quote, unfortunately, they declined, end of quote. Third, the Government Accountability Project said it didn't stand behind this statement as it, quote, violated Government Accountability Project standards because it was speculative rather than evidence-based, end of quote. Fourth, the Government Accountability Project said the quoted employee, quote, didn't know the context when a reporter asked him a hypothetical question and has promised to check before any future public statements that could overlap with Judiciary Committee work, end of quote. So, I hope it's clear. It appears that based on Government Accountability Project's representations to my office, the New York Times misled the Government Accountability Project employee to get a quote, as you could expect, that would fit the Times' predetermined narrative. So much for following the facts and the evidence as you would expect any journalist to do. Government Accountability Project also submitted a letter to the editor in support of this senator. I thank the organization for doing that. What really shoddy work by Thresh, Foyer, and Goldman. Thanks to these three reporters. The New York Times is a paper of record when it comes to attacking and undermining whistleblowers. So I say to my whistleblowers, I will defend you, I will protect you, I'll continue to make public the records that you're giving to me, and so to the New York Times. Shame isn't a strong enough word to describe these unprofessional articles. I yield the floor. Nice to adopt a Senate resolution.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to the consideration of S-Res 601, which is at the desk.
The clerk report.
Senate Resolution 601, designating the week beginning February 2, 2026 as National Tribal Colleges and Universities Week.
Is there objection to proceeding to the measure? Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
I ask unanimous consent the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, and the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Without objection.
I yield the floor.
Yep. Under the previous order, the Senate stands adjourned until Monday, February 9th at 5:30 p.m. At 3 p.m.
Where did you come up with?
Tried.